G'day and welcome to a very special episode of AOS Coach. It is not a faction discussion. I am going to be joined by Chris, aka Peachy, and we are going to talk all things bringing your army to life. And I actually didn't realize, Peachy, that this is a perfect time. We are on the eve of Armies on Parade.
Yes.
We have New Year, New Army. A lot of people usually kick off their new year, or maybe they've got the Christmas bundle from Games Workshop or asking Santa for a new army. And I thought I wanted to talk to you about how on earth do I break away from the box art? How do I take a small piece of lore maybe I read in a black library, or I thought about, I wonder what my Stormcast look like if they were Roman legionnaires. Like, how do I bring this idea I've got to the life and take my place in the mortal realms? And what better person could I ask than the hobby master? 20 years in Games Workshop, you know, you are the lead in the painting phase. I've seen you in White Dwarf. I've seen you on Warhammer Community. I've seen you all through battle tomes and codexes and hobby hangouts. You are a hobby hero, and you're going to help me unpack this topic.
Cool. Well, happy to help. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the things I wouldn't say specialize in, but definitely has driven my creative career for the last 20 years is making stuff up. It's, you know, that's why I was there. I like making stuff up. I've been good at it. I think I've been good at it. You know, I might be cocky saying that.
You were excellent. And I think what put you on the hobby pedestal for me was, I remember 5 years ago, before the Cities of Sigmar was ever a thing, I was an Empire player. I grabbed my Empire, round basted them. I tried to force myself into the mortal realms, trying to push up, beating up Bloodthirsters and Stormcast. And I really struggled. I struggled because there was no place for me in the mortal realms, because I was an Empire man. I had that map. I knew, like, right, I'm in Altdorf. I've got the Beastmen, and I've got all this stuff happening in the north and Kislev, and they're going to help protect me a little bit. I've got Bretonnia over here. I've got this. And I'm like, where in the mortal realms? And then I saw your Hollow Guild. That Hollow Guild converted up what is now what you almost could think about. It was the lead to, I'm now forgotten, the City of Sigmar, the magic. Yeah, the magic.
Yeah.
Hellheart.
Hellheart. Yeah, I think it's like an amalgamation of that and Hammerhow. It was, I don't think they wanted to take the name I made up. They just wanted to make up their own and say, yeah, it's kind of maybe a little bit influenced by that. But yeah, I mean, it kind of started off a little bit before, I wouldn't say a little bit before Age of Sigmar. We were building up to Age of Sigmar. We knew what was happening. I obviously kept all my Empire stuff in a figure case, kept it on square bases just in case, you know, I want to play 7th edition or whatever. 6th edition, 7th, I forget. The semi-editions these days.
I'm a 6 man. I played them all from like 3rd, but like 6th, I think, is home.
Yes, I think it. Yeah, same. So I think the thing for me was I like to have something that, like you say, with the Empire, you've got Altdorf, you've known it for years, and I think with the Age of Sigmar happening, and I had an Empire army, it was an opportunity for me to create something of my own and push the boundaries a bit of what that looks like, because you'd always had those schisms of, like, even Bretonians and Empire didn't get on, let alone like dwarves. I mean, dwarves were always seen as like the decent allies to the Empire because it was rare that they ever fought, but I wanted to include the elves in there. The dwarves and the elves never got on the old world. So I had this notion of, yes, the humans are smashing down, or the Stormcast are smashing down into the mortal realms. But it's not just like a barren wasteland full of like skulls and chaos tribes. There's going to be other stuff there that's holding the fight, because I know the story goes on about, like, you know, Sigma takes away warriors as they're about to like save a village or this, that, and the other, and he then sends them up to the apotheosis and then turns them into Stormcast, blah de blah. And it's like, no, there's more. There's lots more people fighting down there. So I decided to step away from that little campaign area, which was the Realm Gate Wars, which was the Great Parch, and just go, you know what, I'm gonna go hundreds of miles to the northwest or something like that. So we'd had a campaign in the office called the Gate of Stars, and it was written by Andy Clark, and I had this Realm of Battle tile, which I think went in to the General's Compendium, the first or the second one, the General's Handbook, sorry. And it was just like I made my own version of the area of Halaguild. Again, the name just came from some random place. I just made up stuff like, oh, this is the sepulchral temple. This is the bright spear citadel. You know, I just made up like weird names and got loads of like bits of random ship, like Dark Eldar ship and all sorts of stuff. And I made like this map, and then in the center was a place called Halagold. And as you can see there with the pretty picture, unfortunately I couldn't get you a clearer one. I'm very sorry about that.
Apologies for potato cam, folks. One of the only photos that were a bit hard to find, but if you type it in Hello Guild Peachy, there's we'll show you some actually really cool photos and like some close-ups. But this to me was like where I went, holy shite. like I'll tell you a story. My first conversion was getting, I don't know if you remember the Empire hero, is it Rutger, the little I shaved off his mustache, I put a sword in his hand, and like converting metal was bad back then.
Oh
like,
yeah, it's hard.
No one, so bad, like nail clippers, and like hoping mum didn't get angry at me. But like I never really pushed the envelope for converting and kit bashing, and like because the Empire was the Empire. I knew what the Empire was about. Yeah, I might put something like a Pegasus or a dragon, but converting was never a thing. And then Age of Sigmar opened me up, and then I saw potential through the likes of you and many others. And I'm like, I want to now do this. That was what inspired me to start Armies on Parade for the first time, to start looking at kits a little bit differently, to look at 40k to go, I wonder if there's something in there that can kind of help me tell a story.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of, with that project, went a bit balls out on it because I didn't agree with, because you had like the Azerheim stuff, and I was just like, there needs to be stuff out there. So I thought, you know what, I'm making this city, got a name. I made like that was Armies on Parade, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to do an Army on Parade. It's like they're getting ready, they're mustering ready for war. And there was a couple of things I wanted to do. I wanted like the races working together, because like Azerheim in the Grand Alliance book referred to, they had all the different races in there working, and there was like the big cull at one point. But I wanted my Stormcast to be seen as like the Space Marine equivalent, not like lots of them, but like a handful of them. And these particular ones I started doing, I think I called them the Celestial Shield. I wanted them to rarely put a helmet on, because they wanted to humanize themselves with the races, as opposed to being like completely faceless warriors that appear in legions. I mean, that's cool if you like that, I'm not going to disrespect that, but I wanted mine to be like a handful, a bit like the Tempest Lords that, get the best out of the people, and there's like one or two of them here and there. So I'd only do like 5 liberators at most, a handful of sequitors, as because I really like that range of the sacrosanct stuff when it started coming out. I really like the monkish. There was more color, I could put more color on them because of all the robes. But yeah, the first thing I did was I had this Armies on Parade. I'd ordered a bunch of sets, but I was going down the route of like, I've got a bits box, I've got loads of stuff, I've got a few things I can access, because most people have somewhere a bits box, like spare swords, spare pouches, spare heads. But at the time, because people were doing stuff for White Dwarf, they were going a bit over the top, going, I'm going to order all these sets, I can order all that amount, and White Dwarf's going to pay for it, and I'll do this. I was like, no, I'm going to go down the route of, if I'm a hobbyist at home and I've got like a budget, and then I'll work around. And I think that actually helped me a lot more, because that's pushed my conversions a bit more. So when I built my Eternal Guard, I didn't want them as Eternal Guard. I quite like big double-handed blades. So I was like, well, I'll do them as Wildwood Rangers, but I want to save the hoods for something else, because they've got masks on and they look cool, they look a bit mystical. Might save those for some humans. So I gave the Wildwood Rangers Eternal Guard heads. And I wasn't bothered by that, because I thought they looked cool, because they got nice crests. Save the heads for the greatswords. I think that was my favourite conversion of the whole lot, because it was so simple, but made the greatswords look not like Empire. So it was that whole kind of thing of like pushing things away from it being the sort of, this is what an Empire model looks like, and this is what a person of the free cities with their puffy sleeved and puffy trousers. The tricky bit, I think, was the color scheme, because I've mentioned in my chat I did on the painting phase that the Empire is based on the Swiss cantons of like the medieval era. So most of the color schemes are picked. So every color combination you can possibly think of has been covered by the Swiss army, which is obviously where the Empire came from. So I was like, right, I'll try and push them a little bit more. There was very rare you saw gold armor. We've done, Hammers of Sigma, they've got gold armor. Let's mimic some of that. So yeah, I started going into the teals, like almost sky blues, light blues, whites with a bit of a blue tinge to it. And yeah, before you know it, like you saw in the image, I had something that felt not too old worldy, a little bit more fantastical, and then just having like some retainers here and there. As you can see at the back, there's 3 Stormcasts, a Knight Questor, a Lord Celestant, and then a Knight Castellan there. Lord Castellan, sorry, with his dog, his little Griffhound. But yeah, it was I think the weirdest unit, and I don't know if there's any close-ups in my folder that I shared you. I know you've not put one here. Is I got some Dark Elf Spearmen, gave them some Empire heads, and gave them Dwarf Hammerer.
The guns. I do have that. I do. We'll show that a little bit later.
Yeah,
I don't want to ruin Christmas.
It
is Thanksgiving.
Christmas.
It is Thanksgiving for the folks joining us. So thank you for joining us on Thanksgiving.
Yes.
But you've raised a lot of good questions, because I think a lot of people either go onto Twitter or Instagram and see these incredible, crazy kit bashes conversions, people using 5 kits for one model, and that can be very cost prohibitive and very limiting. And converting kit bashing, building a theme, to me, doesn't have to be buy 7 kits to make one unit of 5 that dies to a stiff breeze. It could be just looking through your bits box.
Yeah,
it could be.
Oh no, I've not dropped out of her. Oh, this is embarrassing. Still got connection. Oh no. Oh no. No. Get you on the Twitter. Oh, I keep talking. Oh, you out? Oh no. So if I'm right in thinking, maybe it's me on my own, guys, and he's gone. So yeah, I'm going to keep talking. So a lot of things I used to do with like converting is, like as Anthony was saying, is just simple head swaps is the biggest thing. I think if you look at a kit and then you find that you've got usually you get 2 builds in a kit. You always get 2 builds. And the problem with a lot of kits nowadays is you will probably find that you get so many spares on the sprue that you don't do anything with them. Like the new Kazakin, you've got 2 sets of heads for a set of 10 figures. You've got 2 entire sets of heads. So I know we're not talking 40k, but it's just an example. So one of the things I found, like when I was doing the Halaguild stuff, was I'd have like 20 Eternal Guard heads and 20 Wildwood Ranger heads, plus some extras because you get different ones for your commanders. And the same for like the dwarves, the same for the Empire, same for the Dark Elves. So your conversions don't have to be massively complicated. They can be a simple head swap. With the Spearmen, again, I can't show the picture just yet. I've got some guys with the Dark Elf shields, and I took off the spears, the Dark Elf spears, and gave them the spare axe heads and hammer heads from the Longbeard set. So, and then of course the gunners, I'd like the Iron Drakes with the big guns. So I use those on the Empire. Got some great sword bodies. I just get arms. So yeah, it works out quite well. Yeah, you're back. Yeah. Oh, am I back? Can you hear me? Oh no. I'll keep talking. So yeah, I use like the big cannons from the Fire Drake. I forget what they're called now. I'm going to call them cannons because that's what they are. And I use them as handgunners. It's only 10 guys, but that's fine. I mean, they didn't survive particularly well in the games, but I wasn't really bothered about that. I was going for the look. I was always going to go for the look, never for the win. And as time went on, I just kept adding new units to it, new Stormcast units to it. I accrued lots of spares as well. So that's how the process when I'm doing any kind of like army building is slow. Start off slow, like a slow burn, like 4 or 5 units, and then in there you can stick a couple of commanders. And then as time goes on, when new releases come out, just add some. And over the time, I added some cavalry. I added some man-eaters, which we'll come to in a bit. Different types of stormcasts. So it started off with liberators, and I kind of found those quite clunky. After seeing some of the newer stuff started to come through, like the sacrosanct stuff, which looked much more, I don't know, mystical, monkish, because of being Stormcast. I wanted mine to feel a little bit more otherworldly, and having all these monk robes and stuff like that was really ideal. So, and again, most of them I kept helmets off. I think 1 or 2 might have helmets underneath. But yeah, it was a really nice way of just pushing the IP a bit more for myself, and then you can just start writing stuff, coming up with ideas of like unit names. So because I made this map, I was then able to call them like, these are the Shimmerglass Spire halberdiers, these are the Bleak Henge swordsmen, these are the Tempest Blades. I was going for like lots of celestial styles of naming conventions as well. And I think that's a tricky thing when you're doing anything. So, for instance, if you're, let's say, 40k or even any kind of Age of Sigma stuff, is you've got the realms for Age of Sigma, you've got unit types. I try and, like, my Citizens of Sigma stuff, Stormcast, try and keep to it like a celestial theme and a weapon theme, because that's how the name convention's done for a lot of the books. But you want to put your own kind of stamp on it. So if it's like the Realm of Fire, I mean, I called mine, I picked a location in the Realm of Fire. It was called Iridia. And I started doing, well, I'll skip back a little bit because I probably jumped ahead here. The design of Halaguild was like 2 gateways, a bit like Hammer Howe. You have a gateway going to the Realm of Life of Hammer Howe and the Realm of Fire. I kind of broke the law a bit for myself because I didn't realize they were going to do this, because I made this before it all went official. But I had a gateway that linked as Azir to the Realm of Fire. And apparently that's not a thing, but it is now, so it doesn't matter. But in the initial Realm Gate Wars, there wasn't a gate because they closed them all down. But hey, you know, I wrote history at the time for myself. I wasn't really thinking about the grand scheme of things before it happened. So yeah, I had like 2 gates, Realm of Fire and Azir. So a lot of the Azir stuff came through first, but as the Realm of Fire guys settled, I started to go for like red tones. I started doing red color themed warriors. I had like guys with like, I think it was great swords again. It was great swords because they're such a good kit. And then I used some spare bits from my Executioner's stroke Blackguard. So I used the Blackguard halberds, and I had a bunch of the Sisters of the Watch, so the Wood Elf Archer ladies, and I used the Shadow Warrior heads on them. So I had this weird amalgamation of sort of Empire mixed with Dark Elves and then High Elves. So I started painting those in reds, like red lacquered armor, and that was the thing. It was like, yeah, this is the side that's the Realm of Fire. They have red, and they're a bit more ambitious, a little bit more impetuous, probably a little bit more easy to anger as well. And then the ones from Azir, so I had like a nice sort of mix of like blues, whites, and golds, and then reds, yellows, and red lacquered armor with bits of gold on it. So the Storm host that went for that were called the Flame Lords of Iridia, and I really like those little candle things you used to get on the chain rasp. I want to say commando. It was like a little banner bearer guy, like a little candlestick. So I'd use that and stick them on the backs, which I thought would look cool. And there was like, I guess maybe in my weird peach meat brain sort of thing, was like, hey, it kind of like brings the ghosts to them so they can smash them in the face with hammers and stuff like that. So yeah, it was almost like moths to a candle. That was the plan. Anyway, moths to a candle. But yeah, the area they came from was Iridia. I called them the Flame Lords of Iridia, and then I just went down a fiery route. And then I was like, I'm going to give them sort of Eastern kind of names, like Indian, maybe somewhere between there, like North Africa, so, or Persian. So I started like giving the Stormcast like a different sort of style and vibe, and giving them like slightly darker skin tones as well, so they kind of fit with that. Yeah, and that's one of the principles of building an army, is like a name on a map, a weird idea, or again, sometimes you get like a paragraph or a sentence in a book. So the initial, when Anthony put up the Armies on Parade set, there was a picture in the very first Grand Alliance book of just, I think it's a Lord Celestin, Lord Castellan, and he's like stood on a throne dais, raised dais, and he's looking down. You can see like these hangers on, like civilians and stuff. And it was that one piece of art that just went, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to make an army and just have like this guy like giving a big heroic speech before they like get sent out of the gates to do some fighting. So that it can be as simple as just a piece of art, a bit of text talking about like the races of Azir coming together, and then that springboarded my army. So converting, for any folks out there, it isn't this sort of mystical ability like a special martial art that you need to know. It's my very first hey, you are moving, I see a moving face, but no audio.
Third time's a charge, hopefully.
Yeah, we got audio
3 times. I apologize, folks. Thanks for hanging around, and thank you. I got a professional here with Peachy.
Well, I'll just waffle. If you leave me going, I'll just keep on going. So I know you were talking about head swap, so I kind of just went off with the head swap thing, and then the gates of as Halaguild being one side to the Realm of Fire, one side to Azir. And now I was saying to the folks watching that at the time when I came up with that, it was before they made the sort of law rule, which was like, yeah, the Realm Gate Wars, there's no gates that link to Azir because they've all been smashed. I was like, oh, before, but I made it as a thing now in my head. So, but now it's fine, so it doesn't matter.
All right, I can stop having a heart attack in a second. Should I cut some of what we? I don't. It's like the lost tapes. Like I don't know if I've missed some really good things, or you just waffle. Then I should just cut it out, or what I was gonna. I might get back on track because I'm conscious of time and my complete potato laptop freaked out. But for me, like I got thinking with my Sylvaneth, I'm like, what does a Sylvaneth army look like in the realm of Shaman? Yeah. You know, everyone paints them as like, you know, dryad bark and a little bit of wood, you know, lovely looking autumn leaves. But like, what does it look like in another realm? And it was that simple question that's gotten me to think a lot about what does Cities of Sigmar look like in the realm of death? Yeah. What does it look? What does a Stormcast army that's been in a particular realm for such a long time look like? And then how do I bring that to life through models, through conversions, through paint schemes? And that to me really helped break away from the traditional box art, the Hammers of Sigmar gold armor. I looked at like Space Marines, and I know you mentioned a little bit about, you know, some of the crossover of Empire and the Cantons. I'm like, I recently painted my Stormcast as like Blood Angels. I'm like, no one's really doing red Stormcast. What does that look like? I've got a tried and true tested method in Blood Angels, and it looks really good, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, my mate Steve had a play around with doing you were talking about the Roman Legionnaire theme, and he literally got the Hallowed Knights, and anything that was blue became red, and they look great, and they kind of had a vibe of a Roman Legionnaire at the same time, as well as like being very distinct Stormcast. So it could be as simple as you just swap out a color here and there. Talking about the Sylvaneth thing as well, like, you know, different realms, what they like. I don't know why it occurred to me one day, we're talking about like, because we're doing the Sylvaneth army for the studio, and there was one episode of Stargate where there's an old city buried underneath this farmland, and they kept getting this thing called iron root that kept popping up, and they have to like get rid of it. It was just old steel girders that were just like forced their way through the ground. It's like an entire like civilization that was underneath them. And I was like, yeah, maybe they are made, because when early days it was like, don't be too literal with the realms. I was like, but you gotta, because that helps people understand. If it's the realm of metal, maybe because I still want to do this Daughters of Cain realm. I want to do Daughters of Cain temple for every realm is the goal, and I want to do one for realm of metal where they've got like golden skin and golden hair, but like almost the skin's like metallic flecks. If like someone's put, if you ever watch Goldeneye, not Goldeneye, Goldfinger, where the lady gets painted gold, it's that kind of, she's got blonde hair, like very white, almost peroxide blonde hair, and then this like deep flicky sort of gold skin. I was like, that would look mega. And then I think there's like some warriors in Oblivion, like some angelic, I think it's like a weird one called the Shivering Isles, where you go to this mad gods realm and there's some golden warriors there. I was like, that's what Daughters of Cain should look like in the realm of metal. Everything should be gold, or at least elements or metallics. So yeah, iron root, iron wood, that makes perfect sense. Silver birch, literally silver. There's a type of tree called a silver birch. Your tree should be purely silver.
But I love that, right? You've drawn through, and I think we're kind of leading into the topic here, is that there is so much inspiration around us. We don't have to be just in the Warhammer world, whether it is looking over the fence into 40K. It could be a television show you're watching, you know, Game of Thrones. I remember watching Game of Thrones going, I love the White Walkers. I wonder if my Crypt Ghouls could look like White Walkers, and get them very like fleshy, but also very like frosty type of skin. You know, I could be watching any television or movie thinking, how does that get Warhammerified? And I did saw a comment, you know, one of the comments JBA are saying is, I'd like to do my things like a Mongolian Slaves to Darkness. I don't know what realm that would be. First off, it doesn't matter. But second of all, it could be what possibly could represent that type of Mongolian idea that you want to bring to the table, whether it might be the realm of, let's say, death, where there might not be a lot of life and you need to be doing a bunch of raiding and you want to be doing X amount of things. But it also could be anywhere, like what grabs your story and what helps you bring this to life.
So you could chuck an idea in there. You could go full on Mongolian, which is like they literally conquered like half the world, right? And so as opposed to just one world, don't restrict yourself to one world. They go across realms, and there are different units from different realms in their army. So it's almost like, you know, not Attila, the Genghis Khan would turn up to castles and he'll do the whole sort of tent thing, white tent, surrender, you all live, but you join my army. Then it was like the red tent, all the men die. Black tent, everyone dies. But if you do the white tent thing, you've now joined the Mongolian army. So you'll have like regiments and units in there with a slightly different vibe. They might be from the realm of death, and they've made their way across all the realms, just a path of destruction. So that could be your thing. Is the stick is not one realm, all the realms, or a bunch of the realms, because they're making their way across to smash Sigma's face in. Who doesn't want to do that?
I love it. It kind of reminds me a little bit of what Kragnos has done in the Broken Realm series, where he's going around collecting parts of the Destruction tribe to eventually go get, the shards of malice.
Ooh, yeah. No, yeah. It could almost be like it's those two things meeting: unstoppable force, immovable object, and all that. Yeah. No, look, Mongolian tribes sound cool though. That'd be wicked. Oh, horse archers. Oh, get some horse archers. And oh god, because we've seen the new Attilian Rough Riders, Age of Sigma, fire them up. Stick them in with your Slaves of Darkness as like a Marauder Horseman. Sorted.
There's so many cool ideas you can do, and I know you've done, awesome Daughters of Cain Warcry warband, or actually not Warcry warband. It was a whole Warcry table. Something that I saw recently that I kind of like, it blew my mind. I'm like, why didn't I think of that? It makes me cry because I've still got the original kits, and it was so simple and so in front of me. I'm like, why didn't I do that? Was your Sisters of Sigma, your Warcry warband with the Sisters of Battle combined with some Stormcast, and I'm like, this is my favorite Mordheim warband. How did I not think of that?
That as soon as I saw them come out for Kill Team, I was like, they are, because I've got Sister Battle as well. I was like, I'm sorry, I've got Sister Battle, but they're not going in my Sister Battle army. They are getting turned into a Warcry warband, and I'm gonna again. I went down a massive sort of like rabbit hole with the Bloodwind Spoil. The Bloodwind Spoil had a map in Warcry, and there was one little thing that said Los Valorum. It was an ancient order ruined city, and I was like, cool, that's where I'm going to base my somewhere in there is a Daughters of Cain temple, and they work around smoke and mirrors and shadow magic and stuff like that. So it's never been found by the tribes because it's buried under like mountains or whatever. So no one's been actually able to find it, apart from maybe some Slash warbands, and Daughters of Cain and Slash don't get on. So I had this whole narrative of like in this massive labyrinthine temple, there's like a war going off between the red-skinned Daughters of Cain and like a bunch of slashy things I converted. But then I thought, I'm going to turn Los Valorum into my Mordheim, and we've got the Witch Hunters now, and I decided I was going to make a little temple inside of Los Valorum because it's all ruined, a bit like Mordheim, and it's like a Sisters of Sigma temple, and they're going out looking for Varanite and not warpstone, so they're collecting Varanite and storing it away. So a bit like Mordheim, where they're getting all the warpstone and storing it underneath. I was like, I may have just done my own version of Mordheim, but I don't care because that's what the hobby's about.
By the way, I think in one of your latest talks on the painting phase, you mentioned like, I can't believe they haven't done Mordheim yet. I'm waiting for Mordheim. I'm like, surely they've brought Battlefleet Gothic out. Warcry was never Mordheim for me. I'm like, come on, bring me Mordheim. I love this cataclysmic. The comet has destroyed a city.
Yep.
Everyone's trying to get their riches. There's all this craziness that's going on. That to me still captures my magic. That and Gorka Morka again. I think that converting part of Gorka Morka, where you just kit bash, very orky, just whatever. It was such a cool game.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were looking at trying to tick the box of Gorka Morka when they did the Speed Freaks game, and they were going to look at doing some add-ons for it and stuff like that. But it never took off. I think the game itself was okay, but most people just went, it's just a game, and it's just speed races. But
I think everyone was like, "Where? That's Gorka Morka. Surely,
yeah, exactly, yeah." I mean, because they'd actually made those vehicles specific to that game, but then they became main range for orcs as well. But yeah, Mordheim. I've got Warcry and I've got the kits from Underworlds. I've played Underworlds a handful of times. I like the game, but it's not for me. I like the models; they are for me. But the game itself, I struggle to get my head around. I'm not that kind of player. I like stories and fighting and then resetting and respawn. It just feels I'm playing like Call of Duty. I'm just like, cool, yeah, here we go again. I've died, I've come back. But taking all those kits, Mordheiming them up, or Mord crying them up, as I referred to it, because I like Warcry, I like the type of game, and you can get narrative out of it. But you really need to find that group of people. But again, more time. You know, that's an opportunity just to do some cool new kits. Have it small, just build up like Necromunda did. You know, it started off with a handful of things, and now look at it, so much going off of it.
But a lot of that also can help you with your inspiration. Like I remember seeing the old Warhammer quest when the very first Age of Sigmar Silver Towers Warhammer quest, and there's little spider-like goblins where it's like they could be the Spider Fang version of the stabber. And then it kind of raises the question, well, what else what does a squig spider look like? If I want to run squigs and that's the War Scrolls and I play competitively, or I want to play it in game, well, what does that look like? And I think one thing I want to ask you, like we talked a lot about cool ideas, and there's so many, right? Like I'm going to bring up photos and hopefully the stream doesn't crash again. But, you know, like you've got so many cool kit bashing conversions and ideas, but what does it mean to you when you actually find a part of the Mortal Realms? Like if there's someone here listening to this going, I've always painted box art, or I don't know where to start, or, you know, why should I do the extra effort and read the books to find that place in the lore? What does it mean to you to create something that's unique and special?
I think that's how I've always been. I mean, even like back in the day before I even worked for Workshop, I always went my own way with the color schemes. And I think that part of that is when you're a kid and you're like painting stuff, like, because I used to do Airfix figures, I'd like get like Civil War Americans and like Napoleonic British, and I'd still make them up. Like I'm going to give them pink tunics and like yellow trousers because I can. And I think there's an element of that, but also I like looking at other stuff across history and going, how would they look like that? And that's how a lot of the stuff has come around over the years, is just like being inspired. And obviously Workshop can't say that they don't do that, because they are inspired by a lot of historical stuff. That's, you know, where it kind of came from. But at the same time, it's using those. So like my Ventrilians, I know, you know, 40k, but they were based off Napoleonics. So, you know, it makes sense to do that. A lot of the Empire stuff is based off Landsknechts. So taking colours and push them to a different thing. Like, what would Landsknechts look like if they were modern day or something like that? So, but that's a really lame example. But if you wanted 40k-ify it, then that would be perfect. Like modern day looking, you know, I say modern day futuristic laser gun guys that look like Empire. But it's, I mean, we were talking before we started, I've got this book, which is a beautiful, beautiful book. It's got a whole list. If you've never seen this book, it's just, it goes through all the states of like the Empire. And it's just a selection of different colors. I don't know if you can see that particular one, but just so many different like color plates, and then like little unit shots and stuff. And you can just get like little snippets of, well, look, I've got like some guys here in like silver armor with red and yellow, but maybe if I get rid of the yellow and give them gold armor and just keep it red, so it's gold armor with red. So it's because I pulled up a book, my camera is
so good
out.
So good. But like, you know, here's an example of just like, I've got a whole bunch of images that I can share with you, or I'll share, you know, within stream. But it's so simple when you start looking at it. It's just a simple head swap, and it's
yeah.
Even what you mentioned earlier before the stream crash, which around the Stormcast Eternals, I never liked the helmeted Stormcast. For me, when I read the stories about, you know, Sigmar creating the greatest warriors to be his army, I asked the question, well, who are they? Yeah. Where are they from? Why are they the heroes? What have they done? And I wanted that personality. I wanted to see the faces. So for me, you know, well before they started adding Stormcast human heads to their kits, I was kit bashing with Space Wolf heads with that. And like, I think we talked to as well on a previous discussion, the what's it called? The beard sprue. The Empire White Wolf sprue, like going through the kit backs going, right, well, I want these heads and I feel like they're going to be bearded heroes. I want them to feel maybe they're in the realm of girth. They're a bit more bestial. Boom. This is what helps me tell that story. It could be as simple as that. And it could be, you got a mate who plays 40k, they play Space Wolves. You're like, do you have any spare heads I can borrow and buy? And it can start as cheap as that. You don't have to go out and buy a whole bunch of armies just to kit bash.
Yeah, a quick disclaimer, I didn't spot it until just before, when the picture just on the far right there with the, I guess, grey hooded guys, it was a retweet of someone else's army. I was just like retweeting it, but it's fine because it's nice to have it there, because because I'd done some stuff, and then this person had seen what I'd done. I for the life of me, I can't remember the name because I'm terrible with names because I'm old. But it was really nice to see them take ideas that I've done, and then I like the way that they've used the Skitarii weapons, which then, because this is the great thing about converting, and a great example and a great talking point is you can come up with an idea. I did my handgunners on the top there with the big Pfeifer weapons, but then someone's gone, I like that, but I'm going to use Skitarii weapons because it's like Ironworld Arsenal. It feels a bit more cog and mechanical and stuff like that, which I then went, that's a genius idea. I'm going to take that and, you know, run with that with something else. So, you know, looking at other people's conversions becomes a really good melting pot for ideas. Below there, I had loads of spare Sisters of Slaughterheads, and I just went, just going to make my executioners look a little bit different because they've all got the same helmet and it gets a bit boring. So why not? I think it is Rich's bits. Ricky Smith. I think it's his. I don't think it's Rich Packers. It might be Ricky Smith's. It might be Rich Packers. Oh God, maybe
we're not trying to steal. I did. Peachy sent me a bunch of photos, and being the person that I am, I didn't want to harass him for more photos, so I was trawling Twitter. But here's a couple of examples for mine. Where I started looking and like, you know, I wanted to tell some stories on Armies on Parade. It's something that I've really enjoyed in the last couple of years, especially during lockdown, where, you know, I could present my, like, why do people do Armies on Parade? I love it because it gives me an opportunity to present my army when I'm at a tournament, you know, and, you know, you can see my Cities of Sigmar down the bottom where I've got Noldorf, which is a spin of, well, it's a spin of Altdorf, but like Lamia, where you've got new Lamia, new Altdorf. But I wanted to tell a story where I have Skaven, again, very empire-y, are tunneling underground into the city as my boys are going out. But I think, you know, that's where for me, I can tell a story, and whether it is kit bashing and converting something simple, like at the top of there, where you can see my Mega Gargant holding a shield, which is the Stormcast Endless Spell Dias that I don't think anyone's ever used. But
looks cool.
You know, but then I've also got, you know, the bottom right-hand corner, I've got my Maw Crusher that has a Mangler Squig head. So it's not just for fancy people like Peachy who are Games Workshop people. Like, this is something that I highly recommend, and you can have a lot of fun with.
Yeah, I think, you know, there is that misconception that it's a privilege when you work for a Games Workshop that you get access to everything. You don't. You still have to buy stuff. I mean, I do. I always go to the shop and buy stuff. We don't have like trays of like bits surrounding the office that you can just dive into. It's never been that. I mean, yeah, if you're lucky, you can get a kit. But there was always that misconception that we could just walk to the factory and help ourselves. It was like, no, you have to pay for stuff. It doesn't work that way. But you know what I do like is that village using the Empire stuff. Because I always wanted to do like a little sort of encampment, and I love it. It's just really nice seeing the guys just smash it, and look how big they are. So huge.
So I don't know if you can see it there, but I have a bit of a MacGyver. The top left hand corner, you can see the smoke. That's actually it's actually a USB powered vapor. So when I'm at a tournament, I got a remote control, and actual smoke comes out in real life at a tournament. So it's just a vaping machine. It was a way for me to show the destruction as well, that the Gargants, like, right, well, what are the Gargants doing? I'm like, I didn't want to tell the story of Gargants at home. I'm like, well, I want to see them raiding a village. What does that look like? So there's, you know, again, it's just a way to tell a story that helps you elevate. And I think, to me, that's some of the most joy that I've gotten recently in the hobby.
You can't just skim over Noldorf, because that castle is amazing. I mean, you've got like the little cross bridges that you get from Warcry for the raised diocese as like plaques, and then do I spot one of the realm gate there? I forgot what the realm gate, the hovering realm gate with all the flame. Is that what that is in the center?
No, it's a similar looking gate, but it's not the realm gate.
It's amazing, regardless.
My little piece of resistance is the I don't know if you see it in the little gold statues. They're 3D printed things of the Stormcast statue at Warhammer World.
Yeah, I just saw at the bottom. I was like, I could see Stormcast. I didn't click that you've just done the actual. It's genius. You genius, man. Love it.
But look, it's not the coach show. This is the Peachy show, and I want to talk about how do I bring this to life. I want to distill this a little bit further and be literal here, because we talked about the ideas of how great kit bashing is and why you'd want to do it and why you want to tell a story through your paint, your conversions, your kit bashing. You might write a story. I wrote a story inspired by, I think it was Math Mello, I think it was. I saw on Twitter. He wrote a little story that went with his army list, and I wanted to bring that story to life with my tournament lists. You can go as deep or as shallow as you want when it comes to telling a story. But where do you draw your stories from? Like, how do you get started on a project? Let's say you're going to start a new army, new year, new army, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
You know, something you haven't already worked on. How do you start this process?
I think sometimes I say sometimes, most of the time I'll have a quick look over the web store and I'll just peruse the different factions, and I don't just keep it to like Age of Sigmar. I'll start looking at stuff for like 40k and stuff like that. And I will look at, like, sometimes it's the color that draws me, and sometimes it's like a particular helmet or something. It's weird because a lot of the time when I'm just like the Sisters of Sigma, I just saw the kit and I didn't see Sisters of Battle, I saw Sisters of Sigma. So sometimes there are things in my head that just go, that's a Sister of Sigma. And the other thing there as well, where you got, is the Cypher Lords. I didn't want the Cypher Lord helmet. I didn't like it. And I'm, you know, it's a great sculpt, you know, there's no doubt about it, but I wanted mine to look slashy. So I just used like the Sleekers, the cavalry, because you get like two heads in there. So I just had all these like turban heads and I had these like helmeted heads. Sometimes it is, I see a body and go, I want to do something with that, but I don't want it to be that head. I don't like that head, and I'll start looking at other heads. And then I saw the slashy ones because I knew it was going to be a slash vibe, and I was like, yeah, they're perfect. And a lot of it's test fitting because I have years of collections and stuff. I can look at, like, you know, Empire heads and go, would that work on this? And I just start dry fitting things, going, no, that's a terrible idea. And a lot of it is blue tack or sticky tack, just trying things here and there. But sometimes it is historical based stuff. So I'll be like, you know what, knights with muskets, that's been a thing. There was that time between, well, I say knights, men at arms, where fully armored soldiers have got like muskets. Surely there must have been a thing. And you'll start looking through, it's like, well, there's kind of a thing. They've got a breastplate and a helmet, but it's very Empire. What about fully armored, completely coated with muskets? That must be a thing. I've recently got into this thing called Turnip 28, which kind of goes in that, it uses like different plastic kits and it gives knights muskets basically. So that was where I first saw that. I was like, that must be an interesting thing I can do for Age of Sigma. So it's like the Ironworld arsenal. So you kind of mix Free Guild here then and Ironworld arsenal and make your own sort of Norn. So you've got like your own, you know, city that's like the grey water fastness, but it's not the grey water fastness, it's something else. And then because of that, again, this is like springboarding the idea. This is all spitballing, by the way. I'm just making this up as I go along. So because I've now decided I'm going to have fully armored knights, but with muskets. And the Ironworld arsenal, a lot of it, we show like cogs working like the steam power. That's not like, you know, springs, and well, it might be springs, but it's not like modern day tech. So it's going to be a lot of cogs. It's going to be, you know, old fashioned mechanisms. I'd look at AdMech, because they've got those rifles, they've got like the sallet helms, the sci-fi sallet helms. Is that a lens or is that a gem? Is that like a special sort of seeing gem that's like maybe several gems all lined up? So in their Bale sort of bionic eye, it's not actually a weird sci-fi lens at all. It's some weird realm stone that's been polished to a fine surface so you could see further and then align your gun to it. So yeah, a lot of the time it is looking at a kit or a helmet or an arm or a body like these and going, yeah, I'm going to file off the fleur-de-lis and just give them circlets and then just give them swords and shields. I think the trick as well is like with these is knowing, I mean, I've been here for, you know, doing it for years, knowing some of the kits, because I wouldn't say I've like got a matrix heads up display of all the kits that have ever been made, but you kind of get a general gist of some of the kits that are out there. And folks on the Instagram or Twitter will go, you know, I'm thinking of doing this. You got any ideas of what kits to use? So obviously, you know, you draw upon your experience, but I knew that the hammers of Sigma hammers would fit perfectly. So I could do great swords, but they're not great swords, they're great hammers. And I'll give them, you know, the title of Sisters of Sigma, and then the ones with swords can be novitiates, and then the lady down there drawing a sword, she can be a Sister Superior. You know, again, we're drawing on the Mordheim thing. There is no bold-headed nun lady in robes, so I madly decided to get the Triumph of St. Catherine and turn that into a kit bashing kit, which I've used for lots of things. So she's one of the retainers from that funeral procession with the saint on it. And just a good kit for anyone out there kit bashing is, and I've probably said this on the painting phase numerous times, Blood Bowl kits. Blood Bowl kits are like a converter's dream because you have so many open hands of different scales. So you've got elf scales, you've got even things like the snotlings are perfect for like slight humans, like Daughters of Cain, because they're a bit smaller, a bit slighter, and a little bit like not gangly and pointy. But because I was doing some conversions recently, and I was like, yeah, snotlings are quite good for that. The elves, the Athelloran Avengers, they're perfect. But then if you wanted something like big and ogreish, there's big and ogreish things. There's like the ogres. So there's lots of different scales of Blood Bowl kits now where you probably fit any kind of category of mortal realm creature within there. And then once you've took off the arms, you've got all these like people missing the hands. You've got, I'm sure, across your bits box, spare weapons with hands attached to it that you can just then have like weird barbarians, make a weird army out of all them, or a Warcry warband. But you know, I've used loads. I turned my you won't see them because I don't think you put them up. Which is I turned the Athelloran Avengers, gave them a load of Black Ark Corsair cutlasses and the hand weapons because they're the same scale, and even I think it's some of the Shadow Warriors. They have like the gloves. I always find if you've got gloves, they're great because it hides multitudes of sins. So you don't have to line the wrist with like the arm. You can just cut it off a bit, and then you've got a glove, especially if it's a glove that flares out. So yeah, a lot of the pirates and Shadow Warrior kits were great for doing stuff like that. In fact, there's some pirates that you did pull up some pictures of, that I did. I think I called them the Pirates of the Caribbean. Sorry, yeah, those guys. Yeah, so I've got Eternal Guard there. I use those. I've got some Shadow Warriors, but yeah, just cutting them off at certain places. Like you see, I've got a mixture of weapons. I've even got a Dark Elder Archon 2. Executioner stroke Blackguard, but they're like the bosuns. So I've got my captain, I've got his 2 bosuns, and then just a whole mangle of warriors. And 40k, plenty of witch elf based or Dark Eldar witches heads from them, blades from them. Yeah, there's a lot of things when you start filtering out just from like Age of Sigmar, like I said, Blood Bowl, 40k. So yeah, that's a great example of just, yeah, they're all spare weapons, and if I had some Blood Bowl guys, I'd stick them in there as well.
It's funny you mention that, because when you start with the concept, you really open yourself up, right? I am very vocal that I'm not really a big steampunk kind of guy, but when I was doing my Tempest Eye, I really wanted some KO, but I don't like KO. Sorry, KO people, it's just not for me. It's not my hobby. So I thought to myself, how do I KO my army, still make it feel KO because I wanted to go to tournaments, but make it feel like me? And you mentioned Blood Bowl. I put halflings on my balloon boys. I used I got the KO weapons, but I used halflings because to me that is Empire. That is my Cities of Sigmar, and that was a nod to the past. And I'm like, the Blood Bowl kits were really good, but you mentioned when you start expanding your horizons, I've been. My Daughters of Cain, for example, when they brought out the new hero, the Slaughter Queen, I've forgotten her name. Yeah, the high gladiatrix or gladiatrix. I'm like, I want 2 of them in my army, but I don't want the same kit.
Yeah.
And I looked over the fence, and is it Lelieth? The dark Eldar Slaughter Queen looking. I'm like, you would be a great second, carve off a little bit of the 40k stuff that might not quite represent my army or looks a little bit too weird. Give her a crown like the Daughters of Cain to have, spare heads, and she looks no different. There are so many things that convert really well. And the reason I mentioned earlier that I wish that I thought about the Sisters of Sigmar earlier was that my Stormcast have a no old cast policy, where I only want Thunderstrike. I do not like the old. I don't like the old chunky Stormcast.
Yeah, same.
So, but I'm like, I'd like to run some Evocators. I don't want the chunkier versions, but how do I still represent the cloaks, and how do I still represent what feels like an Evocator without going and converting and green stuffing my own robes? Boom. that Sisters of Battle is a lot sleeker. And if I just slightly modify it, it could be my evocators without, breaking the thing that I'm trying to create.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at like the Sister Battle because they have. I love their sallet helms as well. And you got the full helm on as well. They do look like cool looking knights, so you can play around with that. But there's like cables here and there around like the gun. I got like this big cuirass here with the shoulder pads. Once you paint that the same color as the armor, it's not that noticeable. So it just looks like a weird stylized kind of gorget or bit of like armor that comes around. So a lot of it is just paint solutions. I mean, I filed off the fleur-de-lis off one shoulder pad on my Sisters of Sigma that I did for the set. There's going to be some fleur-de-lis here. I'm not bothered by it. It just looks like a weird stylized twin-tail comet. That's my version. But yeah, filing off here and there a little bit. They just jump in quite nicely. And again, it's the painting. As soon as I put like blue and white, because that was the color scheme I went for. I know back in the day there was red and white or red and cream, but there was also like some blue and white ones that were done for the old Mordheim book. That's why I went, okay, blue and white. That's the ones I always painted mine as. But I mean, I've got a whole bunch of Dark Eldar heads on these pirates, and they don't look out of place in a weird way. Maybe the one with the glowing blue eyes potentially, but then I'm not that bothered by it. Still think he looks cool. But yeah, I mean, it is sometimes just as simple as like a model from a different range, like you're saying with Lilith, and you just go, you know what, just take that, got the base body, maybe use some different weapons here and there, or swap off some bits. I mean, I really like when I do my Daughters of Cain conversions using the Kinnerai and the Melusai kits, because you get so many spares from those, and then just doing like swapping around. I mean, I made up my Melusai there just using a well, it's just a mixture of stuff. That one on the far right, I think, is the sorceress from the dragon, and then just using like the odd head from here. There's like a pauldron that's from the Melusai on one side. There's a little bit of the armor that goes around the waist. Fills some gaps as well if you've got like the odd gap here and there. This is interesting. There's I'm a big fan of Red Sonja, and that whole kind of Dynamite comic stuff. You've got Lady Death, and you've got someone called Purgatory, who basically is like a red demon lady. And as soon as I saw that art, I was like, I'm doing my Daughters of Cain like that, because red skin. And the trick is painting red. You can go too orange or you can go too pink. And the key for this was using flesh as highlights that put it into that organic flesh tone. Because what we used to do with the orcs, when the orc had its final highlight, it wasn't like a green, it was a flesh tone, like Kislev flesh or Cadian flesh tone. And the same principle works here. We do it for like Tau. When the last highlight in Tau isn't like a Fenrisian grey or blue horror, it's like a flesh tone. Again, Kislev. So as soon as you put that flesh, it's humans, the way we work. So like when we add blood to models' weapons, red blood, you know it's blood. If you put black on it, it's like, oh, is that oil? Has he got like weird oil on his weapon? Has he got like weird gunk like pus? But as soon as you put red, your brain fills out it's blood. So when you highlight with flesh, your brain works out this, oh, skin. Otherwise it just look orange or pink. That's the danger of doing it. But yeah, I really enjoyed doing these. Super simple as well. Simple color palette.
Well, it just shows you that you don't have to go crazy with kit bashes and conversions to tell a story. What I'm seeing here, especially the first two models, are very relatively stock standard. Like, yeah, you've got a head swap here and there, but most of this is you haven't gone and got a whole bunch of bits to create something unique. It's been a color scheme that's striking, unique, is inspiring. It's funny you mentioned that too, because during third edition, I wanted with my Daughters of Cain to bring in a ally Phoenix. But I'm like, I don't want a high elf looking Phoenix in my Daughters of Cain. That looks bizarre. So much like you, I got the Dark Elf Sorcerer converted up to be a bit more Daughters of Cain. But instead of painting it like fire or like frost, I painted it like blood. So again, a little simple way to tell a blood Phoenix that still kind of matches my army, but is not crazy over the top.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I need to get myself the avatar Cain from 40k and do that as the animated idol. I've got loads of plans for doing that. And I think I was, before I left workshop, someone was asking me on Twitch what kind of shields to use, and you've got like the perfect size shield with one of the Slanesh Keeper of Secrets has like a whole multitude of options, and one of them is a round shield. You could easily make that look elvish in design. It's the same scale pretty much, so I'm going to go for the old hoplite kind of vibe. I don't know, if it just feels right.
Well, Well, it's easy for me because my Daughters of Cain was inspired by, and this is canon. Like this, sorry, this is going to upset some lore masters. But in sixth edition, you remember this? You had the Storm of Chaos campaign where the Morathi made an alliance with Slaanesh, and you had actually a combined Slaanesh Daughters of Cain, what you would call back in fantasy days. And I did a lot of inspiration. My army was
it's brilliant.
Was drawn from that, and like Morathi's got like a claw, and I've got the old slave girls from the sixth. I've got them writing my Cauldron of Blood is actually using Glutos again, very Slaanesh-y type daughters. There's so much opportunity to tell a story, and let's go through some of the other photos too. But I wanted to call out a comment from Paul from the Mortal Realms asking, how do you start this process, right? You got an idea, you're inspired by a story, you're inspired by something you saw, or you got an idea. Like I saw a great Armies on Parade last year. You'll love this one. I don't know if you saw it. It was someone doing like those Roman chariot races, but they used the Stormcast new chariots. And I thought, that's brilliant. Like, that's such a great idea.
Yeah, no, it's so tricky. I mean, Paul, I've known him for a good while now. He's really into, also, I think he's got every bit possible that Games Workshop's ever had. So if you ever need to ask someone about a bit, that's the guy. He's going to get completely filled with traffic now. I mean, there's going to be things out there that's going to like tweak your interests. I mean, who doesn't like those? I mean, in fact, so I've got so much stuff in my brain that I need to download. So the new Stormcast chariot, weirdly, I really like the archer off the back of it, and I was like, I want that archer. I'm not sure I'm going to do anything with that chariot yet, but I want that archer because he looks mega. And for my Warcry warband, I want one archer, and I want him. I'm going to buy that chariot, and then at some point during like whatever conversion, I'll find a way of using that chariot in Warcry, whether it counts as a monster or whatever, and find someone else to crew it with that, with a bow, like a Vigiler or something like that. So yeah, sometimes it is. History is great. It's a great source of inspiration. Looking through books. I mean, I've got loads of Napoleonic books with loads of different like colours and uniforms and stuff. I picked up a book years ago. It was, I used to get this from the library when I was very young, and it's just like regiments from like the 1600s. It's just full of colour plates of like lots of different things. And sometimes you can just look at that and go, I can imagine that colour scheme with an Empire head. Or I can imagine that colour scheme, but it's armour and not, so like Stormcast, I imagine those colours on full plate armour with maybe a tabard. I'll also go back to your point as well about, Thunderstrike. It's the only way forwards. I mean, at the time, I liked the Liberators and the Judicators because they were the only ones that I still felt they're a bit clunky. And then I fell in love with the Sacrosanct Chamber, and I still like them for different reasons. I just want them in the same sort of proportions that the Thunderstrike are in, because I've done a whole load of stuff on Twitter and Instagram recently where I've just done metal armor. I've not gone color. The color is the robe, so the color of my Storm host is the robe. So I've done silver armor, done like a light gold, washed the whole lot, and then they made them look scratched and muddy, and inspired here by the movie Excalibur, because I want them to feel a little bit dirty, because later on in Excalibur, when they're looking for the Holy Grail, you've seen the knights and they're all like rusted up and their armor's all covered in like mud and all sorts, and they just look like they've been out for years questing. So that's the kind of vibe I went with them. It was like, give them scratched up, dull, dirty armor, but the thing that really striking on them is the robe, which is blue. So again, films, books. That sounds mad. Sometimes when I'm riding home, I'll overtake a van, and the van is like a really light silver with a really sort of like orangey yellow stripe down the middle of it. I'm like, that's really cool. Those two colors work really well together. I wonder what that would look like on a Stormcast. I wonder what that would look like on an Empire guy. So sometimes it is just like you just see colors or like logos or like packaging that just have like certain color combos that work. You don't, and this is the thing, you don't have to have gone to college and done art and design and gone to university and learned color theory. Most of the things out there, like Workshop has all the artists that have done the color theory for you. There's plenty of packaging and graphic design artists out there that make things like food packaging and box art for like Hot Wheels cars and stuff like that. You don't need to do all the thinking. Just look at what other people have done, because graphic designers know their field. So yeah, in short, you don't have to be an artist. You can just look and go, that works. I like it. If you like it and your brain's going, I like that, it's because someone else has done the hard work for you, so you don't have to.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that photoshopping, right? And Ricky's in the chat, Kit Bashed, who has taken that to the next level. Where I'll see him, he'll if you're comfortable in Photoshop or something you want to learn, I see him grab parts from like just the Games Workshop website, will Photoshop a head onto another body, and instead of you having to spend all the dollars to test and learn, you can literally use Paint, Photoshop, whatever it might be. But you also still have you have a whole bunch of ideas that you could just pull from that's already readily available to you. I've seen other people on Twitter, for example, and sorry, I can't think of your name at this point, but I've seen them do this series of just what if type kit bashing ideas just purely off Photoshop. There's so many ways that you can go down and just even I saw JBA talking about the Prime. That's the only model. The Celestant Prime is the only old cast rule that I break. But I had to use Indrasa's wings to make it feel a bit more angelic as opposed to the light shards that come out of the Prime.
Yeah. I mean, Ricky Smith is a genius and the things he does, but you don't have to have photoshopping skills to do this. And one of the things we used to do back in the day in the army painting team was we'd get like heavy metal color sections or like photographs, and we would photocopy them in black and white. So it grayscales them, and if you thin down a color like a contrast and coat over it, you can try, because you've almost got like the shade and the highlighting done. All you're doing is just changing the tone of that grayscale, and that's really the simplest way of like going, are these colors going to work? And then you just get like some gray scale photocopies of stuff, and then just work around that. And it usually 9 times out of 10 helps you get your test model. I mean, I always do test models anyway when I'm in the painting process. If it's the same army and it's the same color scheme I've done 100 times, I probably don't need to. But if it's a new model, like let's say a Lumineth model, and I'm like, you know what, there's different textures here, the robes form in a different way, there's all sorts of like these guys. I mean, these were done like as like Ventrilian nobles, but again, it's like it was a new kit, never painted it before, and I was like, how do I? So I've done Ventrilian nobles, I've painted them many times for my 40k. It's magenta. I have white trousers and I have black armor with gold trim. But these have got different textures on them. These have got different things in different placement. Yeah, I've put the Skitarii weapons on there as well. So that's a different thing to what I'm used to. So always do a test model when you've done something a little bit out there or a little bit different from the norm, because you will be snagged by things that you weren't expecting, like all that white trim. I was like, oh my god, there's a lot of white trim on these, and little tassels as well. So you know how you break that up. But yeah, it's you can make it really, you can invest a lot of time into stuff and do a lot of research, but sometimes it is just, I always go with like my heart when I'm doing like conversions. And I know one of the questions you asked is like, have you had ideas of conversions that you've gone, that's worked really well, all ones that's cool, but I don't think that'll be a finished piece. And I've had that many times. When you're in the process of building that, you get a feeling and you think this isn't working. The Sisters of Sigma lady, you got the picture of the Sisters of Sigma. So the one you've got like her drawing the blade out front and center. Initially on Instagram and I think Twitter, I gave her a burning brazier on top of her head with flame coming out of it. I thought I'll go full Warhammer sort of like weirdness here and give her like a big burning head, because then she can just smite her foes and burn them. And it looked stupid. It felt right for the lore and the background of what there'd be, because it's kind of taken that flagellant vibe and put it into a more of a Age of Sigma sort of setting, and it looked okay, but part of me was just like and as soon as I get that, I'm like, no, get rid. I'm doing the umming and the erring. If I'm doing umming and I'm doing erring, it means there's something not right and I need to get rid. And I just took it off, and I was much more happy, because it looks a bit like one of those flat style medieval helmets, but it's got spikes coming out of it. It's actually one of the things from the prosecutors. The prosecutors get those. No, not the prosecutors. The retributors get those little tilting plates that go on the side.
I've been raiding the Black Templars. Like all my Stormcast are based off. So I'm Maltese. I'm Australian Maltese, and the Knights of Malta or the Knights, the Knight Hospitalis based themselves in Malta in the end. And that drew me to my inspiration of the white and red. And I was reading a lot of Black Templar bits and get like, you know, a lot of their swords and the iconography because it's Maltese. But it's interesting because like once you go down this route, you do need to think about, is this something I can execute across the entire army? Is it something that I'm just happy with one unit? Is it something that I could test as a Warcry army as you've done? And if the Warcry works and you really enjoy it, maybe you then expand it into a full army. Because the challenge I now have as a Stormcast player is if I want to continue and new kits come out, or I want to bring out like Dracolines or other ideas, I've got to get all those Stormcast bits. I need to get the Black Templar bits. I need to think about how do I robe and modify my kits with green stuff or whatever it is to keep the same theme. Or do I think about a story where maybe they're not all just from one regiment, but a combination of regiments? And how do I still, you know, to your Cities of Sigmar, how do I still tie it all in where I know it's a bit of a potato cam here, but they're all different kits. There's, you know, elf kits, dwarf kits, human kits, but they still feel like a unified army. How do I do that? And I think that's the question we can all ask ourselves is how do I unify it in some theme, idea, concept?
I think that there's several ways you can do that as well. And this one was great because it was the color palette. So it was like that white, that blue, and the gold was across everything. And it was the same sort of process of highlighting and shading. Another thing that I've done in the past where I've had like an amalgamation of forces, feels like a ragtag force, is it's the basing and maybe one thing that's shared across them all. And it could just be the banners. It could be that they all have the same style banner. They could all have like the same tones of color on the banner, but they might have different sigils on it. The pirates I did, they're all different builds. They're all different constructions, but they had a similar color palette running through. So they've got that warm red, but then that really cool sort of like dark jade. But in some places I've flipped it round and this, that, and the other. So as again, you know, they're all very different looking, apart from the ones at the bottom, very unified, I suppose. But when there's 30 of them and you mix them all up, they do look very ragtag. And that's the other side of it, is that color palette. When you've got lots of things of different shapes and sizes in one unit that looks a bit eclectic when it's in grey plastic, that color scheme, as long as you keep it strong and follow it through. So tunic's going to be red, and it's going to be this bright warm red. As long as I maintain like any kind of like skirt that's hanging down or like sleeve that's coming down here is going to be that color palette, and the cloaks are all going to be like this weird dark jade. Where I put the gold, where I put that dark red lacquered armor, doesn't really matter, because you've got that tying through that effect. Or even just like the old color, like the sash on the two executioner guys, it's like the sash and the cloaks have those colors running through it. So you know, it's weird. It's like, yeah, it's the color scheme sometimes running through, and if it's all massive eclectic and you want it different, tie it in with the base, because these are based the same as the Halaguild army, or my red Realm of Fire Halaguild stuff is based the same. So when it's together, it still weirdly looks unified because it ties it all together. It's mad. I'm mad.
Mate, you're a mad lad. But, no, but it's like really thinking at the concept, and that's kind of why I want to spend a bit of time on the inspiration and how do you do it right, because the practical application, we can talk about this very easily. You know, what are the tools we use and how do we do it? Like that is test over time. I think it's more about the mindset of, you know, not having a fear of failure. You know, it is just plastic. Like, okay, you ruin a kit, it didn't work. Okay, great, bit of plastic. You painted a wrong scheme, it didn't quite work. Whoop-de-doo, go get some I don't know, simple green or some type of you know, an ultrasonic cleaner, and you can strip a model pretty easily and try again or paint over it. Like these things are not hard, but it's the planning, it's the preparation. Even something that I think about as well is if I want to go and play at like a Games Workshop store or a Games Workshop event, or, you know, enter on Armies on Parade, I need to think about, do I need to stay in-house and do all Games Workshop type bits? Or do I start look at 3D printing and, you know, alternative kits? And, you know, there's a lot of great, for example, my some of my Stormcast have drawn from, I think it's Spellcrow. Spellcrow have some pre-made tabards. So if I'm not comfortable sculpting and doing tabard, but I do want to have some tabards on my Thunderstrike Stormcast, there are people who make those kits, but
Yeah.
that may make me ineligible, you know, in an armies on parade,
Yeah.
or I might get asked the question. So I need to think about, is this going to impact me, or do I draw from the wonderful emerging world that is 3D printing? And hell, I got someone recently to, so for example, right, like I wanted that Stormcast with the Maltese crosses, and I wanted them on the shoulder pad on the left-hand side of my Thunderstrike. The problem is that all of the Space Marine Maltese crosses are too big. They don't fit Thunderstrike.
Yeah.
And no one so I actually got someone to actually custom make me a STL file so I could 3D print my own Thunderstrike themed Maltese crosses.
Yeah.
So, you know, that is an emerging market that people are happy to do too.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue it's green stuff, right? No one's, once it's painted, no one's going to. I wouldn't care because it looks cool. I think that's the thing, is like knowing what you're going to do with it, because you know you want to go to tournaments and play games, and you know there is the rules where you can't use certain things in certain places, which is a bit frustrating. It should be the same rule everywhere, really. You know, I was saying, like on the painting phase, it's like back in the day, it used to be 70% of the model had to be Games Workshop, as long as the rest weren't. But can I just quickly get back to those pirates, because this is
please
of like inspiration and like where it all comes from, or like how you plan it out. So I think the key thing when it comes to any kind of color schemes, you need to do a couple of things. It's going to go down the route a bit arty-farty, but there's like things called warm colors and cold colors, right? And sometimes if you have too much of one and hardly none of the other, it looks weird and it's jarring, and you know, at home painting, go, why does that not feel right? It's probably because it's all warm colors and there's no cold. So a great example is like Eldar. They have, like, you know, Iandan is all yellow, it's warm color, but they have blue or like magenta kind of cold looking like gems on them. That balances it out. Just that little bit here and there helps balance it out. So here on these, my warm color is the gold, it's that red. You could even argue maybe like the leathers aren't super cold, they're, you know, and the black lacquered armor, but that jade cloak is cold, and that helps first of all balance the model out. I know it sounds weird and arty-farty, but it does help balance the model out. So when you're picking your color schemes, have a spot color that's the majority of one, so whether that's warm or cold, and then like maybe a secondary color here and there that's going to be the offset there. So if you've got lots of warm, you want something that's cold on there, and that could be blue steel weapons. So my Daughters of Cain that are red, there's black leather, which is just black, jet black. They've got red skin, they've got like burgundy hair, but the thing that they have got is cold steel metallics. Only silvers have got blue washes on it. So again, you get the cold there. So you've got all this like warm red, black, burgundy. I mean, you could argue that burgundy maybe is cold, but it balances the model out. And then it's like the other things are just peripheries. So a lot of my leathers, I tend to do my leathers, certainly for my Halliger, which is like Inky by Darkness, shade it with a black, and then I just highlight grey. And in the colour wheel, you get something called monochromatic colours, which are black, white and grey. You could literally paint your entire model with that, and then just pick one colour and it will work. So if you pick red, it will look fine. So if you've got like black armour, white flashes, bit of grey, and then red trim or red tabards or red cloak, your models will look amazing. So if you're ever in doubt, go mainly monochromatic and then pick one spot colour like a blue or a red or a green. It's worked for the Raven Guard. It's worked for so many factions and colour schemes in the past. A great example, if we go down the old world, is you've got Norn, and there was another one off the top of my head which I can't remember now. Ostland. Ostland's black and white. Norn's black. They have another colour, mostly red. Wissenland as well is like a light grey and a white. They tend to have a flash of red. Ostland tends to mostly have a flash of red. So it's that old sort of like black, red and white look scary and they work, but you could do blue, you could do anything, you could do green. But yeah, it's, again, like I say, it sounds arty-farty, but it is about balancing the colours on the model. And your leathers, your steels, your metallics, you can survive with whatever you want with those. It's like a flash of warm and some other cold here and there would help your models immensely.
No, this makes complete sense, because the last project that I just did, the Stormcast, I mentioned that they're primarily red with a little bit of white and black, because you know that's the triad, that's the colors that I was using.
Yeah.
But the challenge that I had was that lore in my head was they were based in Gur, before Broken Realms came out, the idea that, you had people in Gur, Stormcast weren't winning the war in Gur against the Realm of Beast. So I thought, how do I bring out like a Stormcast army that's going to help in Gur? And that was where, my questing, Maltese Templar Crusade.
Nice.
I didn't want to draw from like pure history of like, Crusaders, but I wanted Stormcast to be crusading something, and it was to beat back, protect the shards of the old world in the City of Secrets, and that gave me a quest. But the challenge that I had was it was primarily red with black and white, but Gur, as we know, are very red dirt. So it's like, how do I do red model with red base? It's too much red. It's too warm, not cold. So that's definitely something to consider. And I didn't want to just do another color because then it doesn't feel like Gur.
Basing is the thing that's going to snag a lot of people, and it's one of the things that I used to talk about a lot on the hobby clinics. There's a basic principle, which is if you've got a dark model, do a light base. If you've got a light model, do a dark base. You instantly get a nice contrast there. You don't have to worry about it. If you have, like my Halla Guild, an eclectic mix of color schemes and models and stuff like that, there is this star base that you see on the screen here, which is what we used to use a lot back in the day when we did the old world stuff, and even like early days Age of Sigma, which is a nice neutral tone. It's not quite sandy, it's not quite like thick mud dirt, it's sort of like in between the two. And we always used to use Mornfang brown, dry brush it with like an ochre, so whether that's Baylor brown or Talon desert or something, and then a bone as a final highlight. And what I tend to do is, I was really lazy, is I'd do a heavier dry brush where skulls were, and then just do a little wash after, so I wasn't putting that much effort into paint the skulls, but it ties in with the base. So if you've got like lots of colors on the models, then that's a really, really good way of balancing it out. But you want red, right? You want red for the Gur. How do you get that with the red guys? If I wanted to do like red Martian bases here, I'd either go down the Martian Ino spectrum, so it's more orange, so you've got a warmer tone there, and I'd maybe dry brush that up with like ochres or like fleshy tones, because then that would, and I know it sounds like, but you've used flesh for your skin. Well, I've used Kislev flesh, not like Ungor flesh. So Ungor flesh is more like a bony kind of flesh, so maybe push it a bit further away. Or you could just darken it down. So if it's like a really bright red, you could darken it down with a couple of washes of red and like maybe a bit of black on there, a bit of Nornor, a bit of Agrax. So you're still seeing flashes of red, but it's a bit dirty and a bit dark. And again, that you can still get the tone that you want that's narrative, but it still makes your model stand out, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, and it's amazing when you start playing with paints what you can do. I know Louise, I watched a tutorial of hers, and I've seen a few other people do this where, much like you have the silvers, but you want to have a bit more of a blue or a red, or you can bring in different colors to your metals. But also you can do the same on basing. Like one of the things that I had done was I had used more of like a bony type of deserty base, but then I brought colors in with like a really thin down contrast paint, like 1 to 6, 1 to 8 type of more of a tint, as opposed to like an orange, because then that would ruin me. But it's still tied in the world, but I still could tell the story.
Tintin's great, actually. Tintin, that's a different thing entirely. But yeah, just glazing is one of those things that sounds like a mystical thing that's really hard and difficult to do. But if you thin down a contrast, like you said, to like 6 parts water to 1 part contrast, you kind of got a bit of a glaze consistency there. It could be a little bit less, a little bit more, depending on what you want to do. These was just using, initially I used to use the blue gem paint, but it was quite wishy-washy. In the end, I got Talassar blue and really thinned that down, and that worked great, because what you can do is just, when you're glazing, you're not like washing, you're not doing an all over wash and letting it pull in the recesses. You're doing like a layer across the entire section of everything. So it's tinting the panel. So if you did the blade, you'd taint the entire blade, highlights and shades, all with the same level of coat. So it's almost like you're base coating or layering a model with paint. And then that'll just push the spectrum. And it's something I did on an old video when we used to sell the glaze paints, which was like 4 colors, and we got rid of them. But you kind of get.
I've still got like 5 boxes, not boxes, 5 pots of yellow. When yellow came off the market, because what I was using for my Gloomspite kits, I'm like, I'd hit it by everyone in FLGS.
they're still hard to replicate because they were such good tones. Like I used to use Gulliman and Lamenters so much, and even Bloodletter. I didn't think I used Waywatcher that much, but there was a video I did back in Warhammer TV early days, which was talking about glazing, because a lot of people, there's two ways of doing glazing. You glaze to bring your shades a bit lighter and your highlights a bit not too bright, because sometimes it can be too bright. So certainly if you've done like almost like a white highlight on black, it's like Tron, but you can like thin down black and then do another coat and it knocks that white down to a grey. So glazing, a lot of the time when you see like the expert painters, they're doing it to knock back the highlights and then bring up that shade into like more of the mid-tone, but it's still like got a bit of a subtlety to it. The other thing is to knock them into different color spectrums. So like using blue on red puts it more into a colder spectrum, putting yellow on red puts it into a more warmer spectrum. So if I used to use like yellows on blues and greens, which then make it warmer. So again, it's just that neat coat of it and doing it. So that's the other thing you can do with glazes. So if you're thinking that your model is like, there's too many cold colors on it, I don't know how to fix it, get like a yellow or like an orange, and then just do like a glaze across the blade, and it'll suddenly go, ooh, that's added a bit of warmth to the model. So again, I do go into the realms of like being a bit sort of like, oh yes, well, if you're an artist, you know all these things.
No, but it's important to understand color, because sometimes you look at something, it's like it's not quite right. It's like, and you can look at something, so you don't have to go to art school, but just looking at the color wheel. And if you can just look at the color wheel and you look at complementary versus opposing, warm versus cold, if you just understand those two concepts, and there's a lot of videos out there.
Oh yeah,
that's enough to get you by. That's enough to help you create your own schemes.
Absolutely. There's so many people out there helpful. I mean, the YouTube and the internet is great for that kind of stuff. So, I mean, if in doubt, I mean, I've been using weathering pencils and these AK interactive liquid pigments for basing. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I watched one of the videos. I was like, I now know what I'm doing. So, you know, just a bit of research. It's literally like a 5-minute video or something like that. You can, you know, swat up quite quickly. You don't, I mean, I've made all those mistakes over the years. I can just tell you in an instant. You don't have to go to art college and uni for 7 years of your life and go, hey, I've drawn 1 million peppers in different colors and I know what colors work together. Boring.
But yeah, you've raised a lot of good points, because if you are someone who is starting your journey and you don't know how to cut, like I know cutting a model can be quite intimidating to people.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, you know, I don't want to ruin a model. I make the wrong cut. Where do I cut? Again, there's so many YouTube. I remember when, you know, you and Games Workshop would just create those little hobby DVDs, or even back before, it was like how to paint Citadel models. There was no tutorial. It was so hard to get this distilled information. But now, I remember when I learned a tutorial about green stuffing and how actually a combined 50-50 of milliput to green stuff gets a better outcome than actually going pure 1-1, because it has like the properties kind of mix really well. Because I always find like sculpting with green stuff is quite hard at times. Milliput gives me much more sharper lines, but it gives me the strength of green stuff. But there's so many great tutorials out there that if you are someone who's starting your journey and you don't know where to cut, how to pin, how to kit bash, you don't know certain whatever it might be, there's just so many resources out there. And, you know, someone asked, you know, how would you make a base of Shaun? I think for me, and I'll throw the question over to you in a second, it's, well, what is Shaun?
Yeah.
And I think that's for everything that I do. I start with the what and the why. What is it? Where am I? What's going on? And what does it mean to me? If Shaun is about lava and metal, well, what does that look like?
Yeah, we had the early days of Age of Sigmar, talking about the realms. We were making scenery, or making all sorts of like bits and bobs for them, and I did the realm of fireboard to start off with, and I was told that lava, just because it's a realm of fire, doesn't mean it's just lava. It could be anything. You know, it's got all of the sort of geographical locations that Earth has. It's just like for fire, it's rapid. It's it could be like, I know I'm talking about fire. We'll go on to metal in a minute, but it's just a great example, because this is how I learned to get my mindset into like making like bases or like scenery and stuff. It's like fire is aggressive. It's rebirth as well. So like forest fires, you know, obviously once they've gone past, like you get new shoots coming through. So it's that kind of circle of life is faster, passionate.
Well, I think, yeah, I was going to say, because I was reading one thing that really helped me understand the Mortal Realms. One was there was a video. I think it's not on James Workshop website anymore. It used to be about the Mortal Realms. It was a great video. But there's another thing that really helped me sparked ideas still to this day, is the Soulbound RPG core book.
Yeah.
So I'm not playing Soulbound role-playing games, and you know, I didn't bite for that, but it has probably 100, maybe even 200 pages of lore about the factions and maps and cities. And you know, one of the things that really struck me is what you just said, was that in Shimon, people are known to be fiery and passionate.
Yeah.
So it's not it doesn't have to be literal fire everywhere, and you know, the world is burning. It's just that they're more hot-headed.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah. So you take that influence. It's like maybe that you know you could still have Arctic bases, but you might have magma underneath it, or the glaciers are more aggressive. So going to the realm of metal kind of stuff, you know, what defines metal? You know, it's sometimes it's alloys, sometimes it's like a composite, sometimes it's a mix, sometimes it's liquid form. We talked about, you know, dryads and things like that. So, you know, doing silver birches, but making them not quite made out of silver, but the bark itself has almost like a silvery sheen to it, as if like it's been completely coated in slug, so it catches the light. So when you're looking like, ooh, that looks a bit slimy, but it's like catching light. Imagine Twilight, you know, the rubbish vampires from that glitter in the sunlight. You know, maybe the trees do that. Vampires.
Maybe your base is glitter. Maybe it's literally
maybe
glitter.
it could be.
Maybe it's literally glitter.
Yeah, or it could be rust, or it could be like, you know, it gives the effect of rust. There's all sorts of routes to go down. But if I was wanting to tick a box and go, I'm doing Realm of Metal, I'm going to make my base look metal, but as I found through doing lots of painting, if I put like a couple of coats of like contrast over it, it still has its metallic properties, but it's really dulled down, but it looks like earth. Because I did this when I was painting some Stormcast for a paint guide, and I'd sprayed them gold, and I thought I'll just use a couple of coats of Cygor brown over the gold branch. I think it's Fast Riders, one of the Underworld war bands, there, because he stood on like a log, and I painted a couple of coats of Cygor brown over it, and it looked like wood, but it had a bit of a metallic property to it, but really subtle. And I was like, oh, I like that. Oh, I do like that. That's definitely for me a realm of metal tree bark. So it could just be that you'd like pick out like stones, do even like gold ingots here and there, or like lumps of like gold, and then like your dirt looks a bit metallic, but it's not, because it's got brown contrast over the top of it and stuff. So but yeah, I mean, you can go full theme and style, or just be a bit more subtle about it. Like
it can be as literal or as transformative as you want. Like, I'm more of a literal person, so it could be that instead of painting my stones, you know, with Mechanicus grey, it's more gold, silver, and coppers. But then on the flip side, it also could be, and I remember reading the story about the relationship of Gairan and Akshi, realm of fire, realm of life, is that the realm of Gairan often trades with the cities of Sigmar in Gairan. Sorry, in Akshi, the water, because the water from Gairan is just so valuable that it's actually a currency. So, you know, could that be the same thing that I bring into the realm of Shimon? Maybe it's the export piece, and it's so valuable to others that maybe, you know, it's not about metals literally everywhere. It could be the most valuable asset, and that's why it's only in armor. It could be the raw metal's so hot and things that melt. Maybe my people don't have helmets, because I'd just be like giving myself a burning crown, like in Game of Thrones, the liquid gold crown.
Well, it could be as well. Like, I mean, you could say that this soil of Shimon is so rich that, and we're not even talking realm of life. Realm of life's different, but the realm of Shimon is like it's like a rich type of soil that your roots grow sturdier your plants are more hardy, so maybe if you use that soil in the realm of fire, it's going to survive like firestorms, or it's going to survive like the harsh summers. It's going to be more sturdy to it and stuff like that. So, and then getting the water from the realm of life, which is just going to keep that going even more. It's you could go right down a rabbit hole of like narrative based stuff, but yeah.
But that's the exciting part. It's about asking yourself why. It's about not jumping straight into solution mode. It's not about, right, I'm going to have to do this. This is the one way of doing the realm of fire, the realm of life, the realm of, like, the realm of shadow. I was thinking about my Daughters of Cain being from the realm of shadow, given that's where Hagnar is. And I'm like, okay, what does shadow mean? I'm like, okay, I could model my whole army around with cotton buds. It's done. Well, yes, true, but it also could be, like, I remember looking at the Dungeons and Dragons books, and thinking about the lore of the drow elf, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe the skin tones are less human-esque, maybe they're more of that grayscale. And I think that's where, when we talked a little bit earlier about inspiration, it could be Pinterest and Google and Twitter and Instagram. It could be looking for people to see who, like you showed a great picture of your Lumineth conversions with black armor. Has anyone else done something like that? Has anyone painted green armor? And, Google and Twitter and all of these great places can help source and crowd ideas. You can look at history. You talked about history. We got film. You mentioned Red Sonja. It's wherever you draw inspiration from. I know my Stormcast Dragons, I drew inspiration from, again, Dungeons and Dragons and all the different types of colored dragons there are. So my Stormdrake Guard, I've got a yellow, I've got a blue, I've got a green, because, each of those have properties. But then I look at like Krondus and Karazai, one's more of a black dragon, one's more of a silver white dragon, because again, the lore within Dungeons and Dragons has some very interesting concepts, good color schemes, and I could bring my story to life and why each dragon is unique.
I mean, ticking on that realm of Shimon vibe as well. It's like, all my dragons are metallics, because we know in D&D all the metallic dragons are goodies and all the colored ones are baddies, to a certain degree. But I mean, if you wanted Stormcast riding dragons in the realm of Shimon, why couldn't there be copper? Why couldn't there be gold? Or at least to give that infusion of gold and copper. You'd have to literally paint them copper and gold, but to look like, that looks like a coppery kind of tone. The drow thing is such a perfect example, because I've plenty of people ask me about, like, how do I do different things from realms and stuff, and for me, I still need to do it, and one day I will do it. But I want to do like Melusai, but with spider bodies as Driders. It's like something to happen weird when Morathi was pulling these out of the pot. Something's not quite right with these ones. We'll just shove those further into the realm of shadow because we don't talk about them. But you could always find some kind of lore aspect that fits, like spider-bodied Daughters of Cain and bat-winged Daughters of Cain that are a little bit more, on the peripherals. I even did, it was just for a random campaign, for this Warcry campaign, I made a nice board for it, and I had a whole plan of things to do, and I never got around to finishing it off. But I got the Grimwatch Flesh Eater Court guys from Underworlds, and I only did one to start off with, but I painted one in black oily skin but with white hair, and it had a drow vibe to it, but also I was like, these could be like the shadow demons that Morathi refers to every now and again that she's surrounded by. So you could have, like, in the corners when you start fighting, like your warriors are on the peripherals of like the engagement, these pop out and start trying to attack you because they live in the shadows, literally. So find anywhere on, set your lights in such a place that you draw shadows on the board, and that's where they are. Don't walk into that area, because that you'll get them out and they'll come out and start attacking you. I mean, that was just me randomly watching a Doctor Who, because the shadow kill. There's like an episode with David Tennant where the shadows murder you. Don't go into the shadows because you die. There's like weird creatures there. So I was like, that's a great idea, but I'll do it with actual demon things that just like stab and murk people from the shadows, like 40k. The what they call mandrakes. They're from the shadow realm.
I think, from an inspiration perspective, there's just so many places. Aussie Wargamer in the chat talking about fine art. You Peachy, you've talked about history. We've talked about television and movies. We've talked about pop culture. Whatever that you can. There's a guy in my local community who Stephen Jury, you know who you are, converted his Lumineth to be in the style of World of Warcraft. And I'm not going to try to pronounce. I'm not going to try to tell you the faction because I don't know the faction. But it was like people were going up to him at my grand tournament, just absolutely blown away with that World of Warcraft type theme into his kit. And again, like whatever you like, you can mash your worlds together, and it becomes part of you. It's unique, it's fun, it's different. And when you are at a tournament, when you are doing armies on parade, when you are just looking at your shelf, there's something to be really proud of. Not to say that you can't be proud of anything if you just do box art, but I look at that and that's uniquely me because it's a part of me. It's my army. It does make it a bit harder if I want to sell, but equally I don't want to sell it because I went above and beyond, and this is my unique piece.
Yeah. Talking about that, I was doing some story time with the lads. It was like last year sometime. I always do story time. I like to read storybooks at night time before I go to bed. And he's got one. I don't know if it's like something you get in Australia or anywhere else, but it's called Zog. And it's about a dragon. And there's an author lady that does a lot of children's story called Julie Donaldson. And she has, I couldn't really talk about this on live because it's like, we can't talk about other people's product. But she has this story. It's like a rhyme, kind of like a storybook. It's fun. It's about a dragon called Zog and how he becomes a dragon, and he has to like learn all these things. It's very kiddie based but fun. As an adult, you're reading, go, this is quite good fun. Comes across the knight, he fights the knight, they make friends, and they become flying doctors. And there's another book called Zog the Flying Doctors, and I was like, Karazai, I could paint him as Zog because he's like bright orange, but there's weird, and I don't know why, because they did a TV like series of it, or a bunch of these Julie Donaldson books, and there is a bunch of these guards in this king's castle, and they look like Empire, but their colours were very different. There was like teals, browns, and creams, and a bit of yellow. They had like yellow hats with like a bit of brown and a bit of teal as like the fluffy kind of things. I was like, if I build up a couple of dudes, I could probably make these guards because that colour scheme really works. That's really weird. Brown should be dull as hell, but next to that like teal and then having like yellow on there with bits of white, actually it's quite nice. So I started, I've not got around to doing it. I will need to finish them off. So I was going to do like a little play set of like these guards, a giant orange dragon. But again, we're talking like, it could be as simple as like a storybook from a children's story that just inspires you and goes, that colour scheme shouldn't work, but it's in black and white here, well, colour in a book here, and it works. So I'm sold. I might do a small handful of these soldiers because they look wicked. So yeah, children's stories. Who would have thought?
I think something that I'm getting more comfortable with is not everything needs to be an army.
Yeah.
And I think Warcry and Underworlds is helping me with that own personal journey. No one's ever told me I have to do, 2K, but when I start a project, I feel like I'm always committed. That I can have these little hobby detours and do an Underworlds warband, do a Warcry warband, do a Blood Bowl team. And if it's something that I want to test and trial, and you know what, if I ruin a $50 warband, whoop-de-doo, who cares? I don't have to go full into a 2K. The Age of Sigmar meta changes so frequently that, you're constantly on the cycle of buying more models, but you can keep something pretty contained. And if it's just a Warcry warband, it sits on the shelf after it's painted. Like, that's cool. And I tried a concept, and if it really worked, like I did my Mega Gargants. I said to you earlier that I wanted to do flesh eater courts like the White Walkers. I wanted that again, icy skin tone. I never got to it, but I tried that same concept on my Mega Gargants, and it worked really well. So if I ever wanted to do a full, lots of ghouls and things, I've either tested it, or I've already satisfied that itch, and I can do something completely different. Like, is it blister skin that has the red skin tones, or I could go down more of the greeny type of, one of the sub factions. So there's just so much cool stuff. But I want to talk to you a bit about like some of your kits and some of the things that you draw from, because I think that's where, when I look at some of the kits, I'm like, I seem to go to a lot of the same kits often because they've just got so many useful parts. Do you have any that like you draw from?
I think early days, certainly like the Age of Sigma stuff, Sigma stuff is great swords. There's something about that body which is perfect because you got like the cuirass breastplate and you got like the nice legs and some of the like walking poses. The state troops like the spearmen, the handgunners are really hard to convert because although the state troops are okay, like spears, stroke, halberd guys.
Some of them don't have shoes.
Yeah, and there's so much detail. I mean, this is the thing. Sometimes it's like it's overly detailed, so then you have to paint all these extra things, which sometimes end up being, unless you want that, that's fine. But if it's the same pose 5 times with the same hourglass and the same playing card on it, it annoys me. If I want to add detail, I want to make everyone a little bit different from each other. I don't want to have this molded blooming hourglass for the 4th, 5th time, because it's doing my head in, and it's really hard to cut off because it's attached to like a part of the leg or whatever. So the great swords are great because they're empty pretty much, and you can add scabbards and you can add pouches. So if you want to go that extra level, you can go that. But then that head fitting, the little sort of ball socket kind of thing, is like perfect for a lot of heads. The torso width is perfect for a lot of different torso weapon options. So like even like Scutari, Imperial Guard, I found, and a lot of the newer kits that are coming out. So I found early days great swords were perfect for just like nailing lots of like different ideas of color schemes and units and warriors. I mean, I used those so much when I did when it was the early days of the Grand Alliance, you had militia, and I guess they were a bit broken because they could chuck stuff, and it used to murderify most. I mean, I killed Scarbrand with militia because I chucked stale bread at him and he just died. So they got nerfed, I'm afraid, and removed. But I still use them as like 3-year guard. But most of those are great swords. But yeah, I mean, that's like the go-to, I think. Sometimes like Space Marine kits, I just found loads of pouches, and they're great because Space Marine like intercessors have so many pouches that I've just got tons of those. And like Imperial Guard pouches, I have like a whole bag full of webbing and pouches, which is just great because they are quite nondescript and can be used for Age of Sigma. I see you have the man eaters.
I had to. I couldn't not bring them up. So, like for me, and I want you to share your story in a second. But like a couple of things that I really draw from is, like the Cities of Sigma range. I think is really good. One, because they're older kits, they're a lot cheaper. So I don't feel as bad, not using the kits. Things like the Flagellant kits has a lot of crazy cool parts. The Wizard kits as well are a lot of cool parts. I'm drawn a lot to a lot of the kits that have like little companions. So like the Dryads have like the little what are they called? The owls, and the little sprites. The skeletons, especially the Soulblight skeletons, because you can have the skull box, but I want arms, I want torsos, I want other parts of the skeleton other than just the horde of just heads. There's a lot of cool parts, and obviously, like when I was building my Cult of Slanesh, things like Demonette hands were really helpful. But one thing that I kind of like, thank you internet for this, is that there's a lot of places like Bits and Kits, one of my favorite websites, that sell bits individually. Now, it's not always like every bit you need on the spot, but if you need to go to eBay, if you need to go to Bits and Kits or bitsbox.co.uk, whatever it is, even like something that I'm thinking about at the moment is I want to make my Slaves to Darkness. I want to draw from the old Slanesh heroes from like 6th edition, 4th to 6th. So I want to convert my Demon Prince to be Azazel. I want to have, is it Jetchala, the Snake Lady?
Yeah.
But I don't want to ruin both an Iron Scale and a Medusa and the other parts that I'm going to need. Yeah. But there are places where I can buy secondhand models, and if I break them, I bought them, very super cheap. So I don't have to buy full kits. I think there's so much opportunity out there, and you should do this without fear.
Yeah, agreed. These guys. So this was back in the day. I used to sit next to Wade, and he would like just chuck a spark into my head going, man eaters, they were fun, weren't they? Imagine those in Age of Sigma, Peachy. I was like, oh yeah, you could do this, you could do that, and suddenly like, bing, I'm gonna go and do it, Wade. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go off and do it. And the only thing I went out and bought was a box of bulls, Ogre bulls. I just went out and bought a box. I went for 6. Now there's not 6 here. I'll come to that. I've got spares for like future projects and I had other ideas, but 4 of them are from the Ogre bulls, and the others, there's one which is a Ogrin, because I've got Imperial Guard. I had a spare Ogrin, and I can't remember why, if it was like a conversion idea or whatever. So I had a spare Ogrin, and I did buy the Firebelly which is the middle one at the top. But I'll come to that one in a minute. So yeah, so I had these ogre balls, plastic. I had so many bits here and there. I like random bits of a lead belcher, which I then made more of an iron weld arsenal. So we'll talk about the top one, which is the Fire Slayer one. I wanted a Fire Slayer looking ogre. I wanted to use these in my Citizen Sigma army as well as man-eater ogres, so I just use ogre rules. But it was just like, I've got spare plumes from the Fire Slayers because I had a squad of Fire Slayers in my Citizen Sigma army, which was the Auric half guard with the big flame pikes. I think it's the Auric half guard, and you get spare sort of plumes with those guys, depending if you do like a champion with his slightly bulkier one. So yeah, the spare plume there. I've got a load of dwarfs because I did the dwarfs in the Halaguild army, so I've got like spare shields. I've got like weird bat banners from commanders, weird axes, lots of keys. They're obsessed by keys for some weird reason. All of these Fire Slayer guys seem to have keys everywhere. I've got those little keys hanging around. You can't see it right now because he's dropped out, but I'm sure he'll be back. So yeah, the Fire Slayer one was just like finding random bits. There was a banner guy. I thought I'd just give it a big fiery banner pole and just, you know, add some fiery bits on him, paint him with orange hair, make him look like a Fire Slayer. It's just a big Fire Slayer. After that, the one below was a Carrigan Overlords, but I didn't want to just keep it to Carrigan Overlords. I thought maybe he's gone to all the dwarven sort of kind of things like Ironworld Arsenal, hung around with the Carrigan Overlords for a time, hence the gas mask. His skin's a bit more pallid. That was using a spare Ogrin head because you get different types of Ogrin builds depending on which ones you want to do. So yeah, that Ogre was more attuned to like, yeah, he just likes hanging around with dwarfs because it makes him feel big and tough. But he's hung around with some that fly around poisonous gases, and yeah, he needs some kind of rebreather for that. But he's also got his big cannon, so he's like, it was almost imagine like a squad of these guys. Like, yeah, you got the gunner. So yeah, I'm on the next one down, the Carrigan Overlord. I'm just going to be referring to him. So he's been hanging around with dwarves, pirates, and the dispossessed and the Ironworld Arsenal. So yeah, he's seen a few things, he's done a few things, but yeah, he's hung around with those guys. Then we've got the Lizard Man one. He just hangs around with Seraphon. He's just like, I'm just going to hang around with the Seraphon. I came up with a couple of names, but I think I settled in the end on Sore Russ. His name's Russ, and he's a bit sore. But yeah, he's just like, he's either killed things or found things or just stuck things on him. And I was going to do some skinks on his shoulder, painting in blue, because he wants to look like an actual Saurus. So I thought, yeah, I'd do that. So I'll give him like some bits of shield and like crest of like dead dino beast. The Stormcast one is just literally just loads of spare bits of Stormcast. I've got Retributor shoulder pads, I've got Prosecutor shields, I've got Liberator shields, I've even got the Twin-Tail Comet that's supposed to be roundels but does look like a bra. It's not meant to be a bra, it's supposed to be roundels on Knight's armor, but they're the Twin-Tail Comet that comes on the Great Sword sprue. And he was called Ardus Nails because he's Ardus Nails, but he sounds like a Stormcast kind of guy. And then below that, I just went for some random. I was like, Phoenix Temple.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite of them all because it's just incredible. It's just like, your fancy pants Lumineth high elf. He's an ogre.
Yeah, it's just like, I reckon as well. He's like proper acrobatic. He could do all sorts of things. But yeah, he's just like, there's this massive stone sort of statue thing. I'm just going to stick that to my back. I've got this big plume. And then I'm just going to rock up with a massive halberd and hit some baddies. So there were the 5 plastic kits that I worked on. The top middle is a fire belly. And I wanted to do a Daughters of Cain. I wanted to make it as horrific as possible. A big, fat, mannish looking ogre that's wearing thigh-high boots, that's hanging around with the Daughters of Cain, but thinks he's a Sister of Slaughter. And the fire belly has like a weird mask. And I just put like some spiky bits on the top of him to make it look like a Sister of Slaughter mask, painted it gold. I know he's like holding flame, but I just cut his hand off and then just gave him another ogre hand and then just gave him loads of Sisters of Slaughter whips to make him with a big whip. Now the thing I've done here as well, and if you've seen like the stuff I did in workshop in the past on like Twitch, I've lost my patience with green stuff and modeling putties and stuff like that, and I tend to go down the route of masking tape. 1, because I'm lazy. 2, because it's quick and easy. And 3, anyone can do it once you start getting used to it. You've got a perfect example there. So the Gaunt's Ghost stuff came out. I wanted to start adding more to the Gaunt's Ghost range. So that's Catherine. Looks a bit manic, but when it's painted up, it hides the multitude of sins, but it is literally getting masking tape, cutting it to a couple of little shapes, trying it on the model, because it's tacky, it's great, it sticks, so you can position it around and go, all right, I'm going to cut a little bit off the side here, and I'll cut a little bit off the side there. You know what, if I just get like a modeling tool or like a file, I can just push that in to the cracks of his shoulder pad a bit more. That it looks like it's all just scrunched up now, so it looks like it's just done that down by the shoulder pauldron. All I'm going to now do is just add a little bit of super glue here and there, just to seal it in, and that's the only way like I want the contact, because once you spray it, it gets rid of the tackiness, and it also adds a bit of sturdiness to it as well. So once you've got your folds in place and you're happy with the folds, you're happy with the shapes. The weird tannic coats have this extra like little bit of poncho bit that goes around the top and like some stitching on the sides. So I've tried to mimic that. I've cut like little strips of masking tape and put them so they kind of followed like Ibram Gaunt's guys, the plastic ones. But once they're painted in greens to match the cloaks that I've already done with my dudes, it looked the same. And lots of people are like, oh, how do you green stuff your cloak? Didn't, just use masking tape.
That's incredible.
That's what I did on the boots of. I was going to say the boots of the Ogre is masking tape, which is the same thing.
No way.
Yeah. So
like I've been green stuffing for like this Stormcast project, and it's grind my gears because it's so hard to replicate. And that's why I said the 50-50 mix between milliput, and it helps me, and I can file it down better, and I can get a much better shape. But it's still a pain in the backside, and it's a lot of that's just blowing my mind.
Yeah. And the great thing is, even though you've had a little bit of super glue here and there, because it's tacky, it sticks to the plastic. Once it's sprayed, it will soak in and hold it in place. But that little bit of super glue will keep it in place. I've never had any of those cloaks come off. But when you're in the process of like building it, you just think there's something about it, I don't like it. You can just rip it off, and there's minimal cleaning required. Just a little bit of like just a tiny chisel with a knife to get rid of like a chunky little bit of super glue. But you know, if you've been doing enough building, that happens from time to time. You get bits of super glue and then just get a knife and flick it off. It just flies off. Try not to get into your eye, obviously. But yeah, it's easy to remove, but not like super easy that it just falls off. It's like it's on there for good if you keep it.
And that's what I was worried about, was the durability. By the way, Bill and Marine, thank you for the super chat. Much appreciated. Big fan. Nice. And I think, you know, I'll read out Bill's chat, but I think this was like when I announced this show, people were so excited to hear you, because you have started their hobby journey, whether it is with the Warhammer painting tutorials, whether it is your continued stories on the painting phase. By the way, highly recommend go subscribe to the painting phase.
Thanks.
I really, like I legitimately, I've not only been enjoying your tutorials, but also you've had some sit down chats just talking about, you know, how the hobby is and what your experience has been. The latest episode talked a bit about what the inner workings were like on Games Workshop, and even like some of the transition from Old World to Sigmar, which was fascinating. I've really enjoyed those discussions too. So I do highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah, it's fun. We sometimes I'm worried if I'm sailing too close to the sun, but at the same time, it's like it's been, you know, it's been a long time now since Old World was blown up, and bits I agree with, bits I don't agree with. But yeah, we talk all sorts of nonsense. But
well, I think we both agree that it happened too quickly. It could have done better. We're excited that the Old World is returning. This channel will not be rebranded to the Old World Coach, but I think there's a space to play multiple games, and I think I am excited for the Old World to return as much as the expansion of Age of Sigmar. I think I feel like there's a part of me that's like, I just loved it. I love the Old World.
I've got 2 figure cases of Talabacland. I always struggle on that bit. Talabacland down there, waiting to be played with, still on square bases. Oh, come on.
Well, during COVID, I actually did a, I don't know if you remember the lore part where there was the Arabian Night Crusade, where, you know, a lot of, and there was actually night rules. So I actually built a little force of old Empire Knights and, you know, a couple of like Luther Huss type on a horse. And there's something magical about the Old World. And it's funny actually, because some of my inspiration has gone back into looking at the end times, looking at the Storm of Chaos, looking at some of the campaign books, and asking, what does this look like in Age of Sigmar, which is where my Cult of Pleasure came about. You know, yes, you know, Marathi doesn't like Slanesh now, but in an alternative universe, what if, and you know, the lore for anyone who doesn't know, Marathi was captured right at the start of the Old World. she was just a handmaiden and was saved by, is it Narian, the Phoenix King, or I'm not the biggest elf lore person, but she was corrupted initially by chaos, and throughout the entire Warhammer world, she has had a weird relationship with chaos. And that's where when I did my daughter's project, it was more like, well, what if there was still a slither of that truth still happening?
Yeah.
You know, what happens, you know, in the old world, or the world that was, or what is there something here that I could bring into the future and Age of Sigmarify it? And you'd be surprised how much it transfers.
Yeah. I really love that. When I saw you share that with the pictures and stuff, I was like looking at it again. Yeah, because I always remember I wanted to do that army, that Call to Pleasure back in the old day. But you know, talking about like Age of Sigmar, you've got quite the not blank canvas. It is filled out a fair bit, but you've got so much you can do, like, and you can do stuff like that. You can, you know, make your Call to Pleasure. I mean, I used to have this chat with Duncan back in the day, and even now, like, people like saying, you know, I wish they hadn't removed Bretonnians. It's annoying because they were cool, they were old, they could have found a place. And one of the things I was trying to like pitch to Duncan, because he liked Bretonnians, a big Bretonnian fan, and when they not only blew up the old world but removed those plastics from range, it was quite a sore pill to swallow, a large pill to swallow, should I say. And he just lost his love for Bretonnians. And one of the things I was certainly from my mind was trying to do was like go, what is it about Bretonnians that makes them cool? They hunt big monsters, they go on crusades. Why are these plastics not staying in range? Because, you know, we're still part of the studio, we could still have some influence and talk about things. And one of the things that I thought would make perfect sense is they're always on crusade in the realm of beasts. That they have floating castles like Paravon. Imagine Paravon, but it floats in the realm of beasts, and they've got like Pegasus knights coming down. But they're not just riding horses, they're not just riding Pegasi, they're riding all sorts of weird and wonderful wacky monsters, maybe that they've beaten down and then gone, now you're going to be the heraldry on my helmet because I've now beaten you. You know, the weird magma sharks of the spinal oceans, you know, I'm going to ride you across the sea. I'm going to be a Bretonnian knight that, like, you know, fights pirates on the sea with my weird spinal sharks. You know, you could do all sorts of stuff. You could have like stick them in there. Why they weren't in there, why they weren't allowed to remain, it was a bit of an annoyance for a lot of people. And there's a place for them, even if it's Free Guild or Six Sigma.
There is, and I'll put it out there, and it pains me to say this, don't clip this, folks, but there's a place for Tomb Kings as well. You know,
yes.
I think one thing that I really miss at the moment is someone that challenges Nagash, and whether they're going to bring in the Carrion King and maybe Flesh Eater Courts gets their Mortarch, and maybe that's the challenge. But I want Cetra. I want Cetra back to challenge someone in death, because, you know, Archaon has Be'lakor, you know, Sigma has a couple of the Pantheon, and, you know, Marathi recently attacked Sigma, and, you know, we had those types of things. But like, who is challenging death? Bring back Cetra. So,
you know what annoys me about Cetra and the whole idea behind what happened with the world that was, right? So Marvel films, Marvel films, you have a character, a bunch of characters. At the very end, after all the credits, there's a little hint as to a new character that's going to do a thing in a movie that's coming up. You're like, ooh, I know that's going to be Captain Marvel, or oh, I know that's Nick Fury. Oh yeah, he's going to be in some things and stuff like that. At the very end of the end times was Chaos started talking to Cetra. Why we didn't have chaotic undead come into Age of Sigmar, and it's Cetra going, right, Nagash, I'm gonna do you over now. I've got new gods. I'm working with different people. I've got a big brother here who has helped me out. And because it was that weird kind of like, you know, spiel at the very end where it's just like he's like in the sands and some voice speaks to him, which to me I understood as the dark gods. And yeah, I mean, we've seen Krell. He's a chaos warrior that's undead. Why can't we have more of that?
Oh, Krell, bring back Krell, the champion. White. Oh, Krell. I miss Krell so much.
But chaos undead, man, that'd be great. Why is that not a thing?
A couple of other questions I want to ask, because I'm now nervous that my stream is going to crash again. No. Thank you for your patience. I can't believe like we've had so many crashes. Like it must be just Australia Friday.
I keep thinking it's me.
Nah, it's my computer is just like meh. But like when it comes to execution of this, like, okay, I've got this great idea, and whatever it is, whether it's a piece of lore, piece of history, bringing back the old world, something that's brand new. I want to, make my, I don't know, I want to make my free guild more oriental. I want to make humans destruction. I want to do, there's something in my, I'm cooking in the kitchen.
Yeah.
How do you tackle all this? How do I bring this to life, right? I've looked at the kits. I've thought about some inspiration. Maybe I've gone and looked at Google and I've got some, Photoshopped, whatever it is. But how do I like start the process?
Well, I think, again, that little bit of like looking across the web store. So let's say you wanted destruction-based humans. You want humans that are like destruction. Well, straight away, I'll be like looking at like barbarian-esque models that are in range. So you've got things like the Warcry Chaos Warbands. There's a couple in there. I mean, you could take like the Iron Golem. You could look at things like the Untamed Beasts. There's the Dark Oath Savages. You got the War Queen. You don't paint them with metals. You paint them with bones. You paint them with materials that are I mean, the Untamed Beasts are prime for being used as warbands for the Realm of Beasts and working with destruction. But then maybe you give them like slightly not different skin tones, but they paint themselves as orcs. So you get like the Untamed Beasts, and they literally paint their skin green and wear bone armor and hang around with bone splitters. And you've got these like weakling little humans that think they're orcs, and orcs like they're all right in a fight. They're a bit mental, but we eat them at nighttime when they're not doing the job. So you could take elements of like what makes bone splitters, look at other things that might fit into that. And it could be as simple as well, like taking bits of other models. So again, this is not tried and tested. This is like thumb in the air. You could get a Stormcast, like a Liberator, and you could chisel away at the armor. And because I used to do this a lot, like whittle away at the armor so it looks like it's really pitted, a bit like the Ironjaw's armor. So you could just get a knife and just chisel away at that a little bit. Maybe put some like lines and cuts in it, paint that bone, find a barbarian-esque head, stick that on it, and it's just like, it's not Stormcast armor, it's like some horrible bastardization of what Stormcast looked like, but it's made from bone, or it may be made from the bones of a village that a Stormcast guy tried to save, and he's just like, I've just turned it all into bone meal and made armor out of it because I'm horrible, and I painted my face green and put war paint on it, so I think I'm an orc. So you can like literally take like what makes like a certain faction their thing, their vibe, their look, and then try and find kits around that might do that. And again, Blood Bowl's great for that. If you wanted Celtic looking barbarians, perfect. What you do is you get the Norse guys, but I want them more heavily armored. Cool, don't worry, got you covered. You cut them at the legs and you get dwarf ironbreakers at the torso, stick them on top, and you got yourself some heavily armored, Huskars or something like that. That you've got the helmet that looks very Norse. They've got the beard, but they're taller. They're not as squat because you've used like Norse Blood Bowl legs or some other kind of Blood Bowl legs or whatever to add height. Even like the Dark Oath Savages or whatever. It's a tricky thing. I think the key thing for me is I would look at, if I'm trying to make undead chaos or destruction based humans, I'd look at what makes destruction, what kind of like vibes are in there. So yeah, there's lots of bone weapons, there's lots of very savage spiky looking weapons. They're not particularly tech orientated, it is very rudimentary. How could I like undeadify chaos? You know what, maybe I just have chaos warriors and just stick undead heads on them. It could be as simple as that. I've given them some of the weird looking blades that maybe like the Morghast use and stuff, or Ossiarch Bone Reapers. Their heads are bigger, so they'd be great on Chaos Warriors. Some of their weapons are bigger, so maybe you don't have Chaos Warrior armors. You maybe have like some bone arms coming out holding like big blades and stuff. There's no, I guess what I'm saying again, there's no right or wrong way really when you're starting off. It's probably getting to the nitty gritty of what makes the thing you're into, and then just taking elements of that, like painting the skin green, giving them.
And I guess it depends on what angle you're coming from. I guess like I think about this is if I want this as a tournament performing army and I want it to be really cool, but I still want it to be tournament legal. The last thing I want to do is the tournament organizers saying no, this is a proxy, you can't bring this army, and that's heartbreaking. And I never want to do that, but I have to protect my tournament at the same time. if I'm going that approach, I'm thinking about the war scrolls that it wants to represent. And how do I make it still feel like the war scroll, so it's tournament legal, but it's my own spin?
Yeah.
So that's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
So for example, like I mentioned my phobia of old Stormcast, but I wanted Liberators. I wanted Judicators. And I'm like, right, how do I do Liberators that uses Thunderstrike armor that are not Victors?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what makes a Liberator is its Storm and its Shield and Hammer.
Yeah.
So I was able to bit swap and make them feel distinctly a little bit different, but still keep the theme.
Yeah, I did something very similar because I wanted to liberate, because at the time Warcry didn't have this Thunderstrike rules. They only had everything up to Sacrosanct, and I was like, but I really like these models, they're mega. And I did the exact same as you. I just cut off the hand where the spear was, and then in fact I think I took the spear tip and just moved it down, so it was like a little gladius. Yeah, it was perfect. So you could do that. I mean, you can do like bowmen and stuff using the vigilers now that you've got, but going back to the Roman theme, you're talking about like Roman legionnaires and stuff. You could literally take that vibe of how legionnaires are formed, and like say I want my Stormcast or legionnaires. What makes legionnaires legionnaires? Well, they have big shields and they have javelins. Of course, they have the gladius as well. Now, Thunderstrike, Vindictors, are they the spear ones? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, Vindictors are the spear ones.
I mean, they're perfect. First of all, they've got the shield, they've got the spear, they've got a little gladius style dagger. So all you're doing there is doing the color choices. But what you do need is you need that kind of like big Roman eagle banner. So you want one guy to have like the big Roman eagle banner. You want one guy to be like a centurion. I mean, there's that head perfect from the chariot that has like the centurion crest. Get that head off that chariot guy and stick it on your commander in your unit of 10 or 20 or however you want to form it. Maybe you have like, for display, it looks like a cohort, but they all break down as to separate units. Doing some javelin guys. How do I do? I want javelins, but I don't want bows. How do I go about doing that? Well, maybe I forget some of the prosecutor javelins, but put them on like vigilers. So the bow. I like the robes of the vigilers. They feel a bit more lightweight, but I want like javelins. How do I go about doing that? So you can look at what makes the Roman army structure and then take elements of that and put it into your Stormcast. So you've got that kind of like, this looks like a cohort that I remember watching from like Ben-Hur or Spartacus or whatever. And it doesn't have to be the full legion because that's a lot. But yeah, the vibe.
But that's the other side. One is you could start with the war scroll and like, what do I want it to represent, and then try to keep it within its lane. But to what you've just said as well, the other side would be to build the thing that you want to build, especially in a faction that has a lot of rules that's very deep. Cities, slaves, Stormcast, perfect examples. And then go, what could this represent? Yeah. And Matt Holt mentioning the same thing. I heavily kit bash all his armies. Absolutely, I've seen Matt's armies many times. He goes with a theme. You hunt the war scroll, and then you try to make it what you see is what you get. So depending on who you are and what's important to you, there's two approaches. Start with the war scroll and represent, or start with an idea, build, and then find a war scroll that best represents and just align it.
Yeah, I mean, I did that with my Slaanesh Warcry warband. Is I looked through war scrolls, and to keep them together, I went, you know what, I'm going to use the Splintered Fang, and I'll build them to match the Splintered Fang. But I've got a vibe and a style I want to go with, and I'll just make sure I'll just do a couple of tweaks for some of the weapons so I can get some of the cooler abilities. But if you want like a big monster, you're like, what kind of war scroll fits this big monster? Oh, that one. Cool, wicked, I'm going to do that. So yeah, that's a really good point, is use the war scrolls or the data sheets as build something and find something that matches it, basically. Absolutely.
Some factions that's a bit harder to do,
Yes,
but if you find something that you can stay within your lane, if you're trying to make it tournament legal. If it's not tournament legal, it's a fun project. Obviously, throw those rules out. But I've seen so many awesome armies at a tournament where someone's put so much time and passion and brought concepts to life. Even like something simple, like I think it was Duncan had done those Roman-esque, I think he called them his cities of Sigmar, but it was using Carrick acolytes before the Warcry warbands came out. He used Carrick acolytes with the Spartan round shield, and I think he had, I can't remember where his helmets were from, but it felt...
I think they were the Marauder cavalry, and he put like little plumes on them because they have like the little sort of like you know,
Mm.
Spartan kind of a T. I call it a T face. Looks like a T. It's got a name, I can't remember. But yeah, no, that was really cool seeing that stuff. Love that.
There's so much inspiration, I think, and that's the great thing is I'm currently thinking about armies on parade next year, and I've got this idea that I'm insane. I'm trying to find the out of production 2015 Chaos Dreadfort, the Dreadholds. Like, I'm trying to find it. Good luck. Like, I'm gonna have to like go into OnlyFans just to pay for some of this. But like, I'm right. Well, one, I've got this idea that I want to do a board using this, but two, what have other people have done in the past? And there's a lot of inspiration, and it's like, okay, I like where you're going with this. And being a former manager as well, you'd appreciate this as a leadership style. You never have like one person that does like the leadership style. You kind of mold, you know, this leader does this does. You bring it into like make it a mongrel, and that's what I'm doing right now. I'm grabbing all these images, saving them on my computer, creating a Pinterest board, and trying to find that mongrel version that I can bastardize and make my own, but drawing inspiration from people that have done things that work.
Yeah, that's a really good thing. I mean, we used to do those at college and school, which were like mood boards. So, you know, if you're new to converting or painting, just do that. Like what you say, just get like a Google document and then just stick in loads of images, shrink them down if you wanted to, and just go, yeah, I like plumes, I like crests, I like gold armor, I want red, you know, and then you can get a vibe of, and you know, if you get time, you can, and you got the Photoshop skills, you can try and make some out of it. But that's a really solid way of planning out an army. I like that. It's good.
I do it at night. Like as I'm decompressing, I'll jump on for 30 minutes. I'll look at Pinterest. I'll look at, you know, Twitter. I'll look at whatever social platform and just inspiration, look for certain things and just get ideas. And even, and I wanted to ask you about this, and I've probably been sidetracked from all the crashing, is another piece of inspiration that I get is I go outside of Warhammer. I think Matt Holt talked a little bit about earlier about, you know, don't just apply Warhammer filters, but, and my wife looks at me a little bit weird sometimes when YouTube recommends me things, but I'll look at railroad people. I'll look at dollhouse people. I'll look at people who make dollhouses, and, you know, people who show off their toys, their, you know, those figurines. Yeah. And you get some crazy ideas on how they use LEDs. They use, you know, present their army. You get ideas from, you know, the most unlikely sources.
So a really good example, that's something I want to touch on later on down the line with the painting phases. One of the painting videos is I collect a lot of 6 scale, so the action man Barbie doll scale warrior figures like G.I. Joe and stuff like that. You get some decent ones, lots of cool things. There's warriors and stuff. And I do like a couple of custom heads, painting a couple of heads up and stuff. One of the things I found, because I watched a few videos on it, is the approach of that is very different. So when you paint and stuff, you don't, so like large things like monsters, so ale guzzler gargants, you could paint them like we do normal Citadel models, or if you're just doing the one, you want something different. Scale changes how you paint. And there's 2 things I've found from doing photography for some of these things is I literally got a helmet and sprayed it black, and the lighting does all the hard work for you. I don't have to sit there edge highlighting, putting chips into it and like weathering it all up. It's like, actually it looks, it's chaos black undercoat on a helmet, but it looks amazing in photography when I've got this light here, got that like cyan light there. It's done all the work for me. So sometimes when it comes to like taking photos of things, you could just keep it quite simple. But one of the things I found with like faces is when they're painting, they like do a couple of like thin down skin tones. A lot of them tend to use airbrushes, but there's a guy who uses brushes. I don't have an airbrush, so I'm like, I'm going to follow your videos, see how you solve that problem. One of the really interesting things was he did like a couple of coats of like Cadian flesh, something like that on the skin. And then he coats it in like a medium, like, so I use Lamy medium, did the same thing. And then I get like purple, red and blue washes and I flick them at the skin. And as it's wet, it dries in, and you think that looks weird. It's got like pink dots, it's got like red dots, it's got purple dots. Then you get your skin tone, you thin it down so it's like a glaze. You glaze over that entire section again, the whole head, and it just coats over. But you see all those little colours subtle. It look like moles and little like discolorations in your skin. So I was like, when I get around to doing like a big monster, like a giant or an ale guzzler gargant, I'm going to do that because it made the skin look realistic. It was weird. Just by flicking a bit of red, a bit of purple and a bit of blue at the skin, then just glazing over it and then putting it almost in between the 2 layers of skin, made it look like skin. It was freaky.
That's okay. That's blown me away. That has which also this blows me away too. Your Warcry weapon. It's just telling a story as well. Your display board, but it's amazing how many tips you can get outside of just Warhammer. And I think that's why exposing yourself, I'll go on to look at, how historical war game people, do their thing, look at other game systems, Star Wars, and there's so many great ideas. And that's why I imagine, being able to explore other product ranges outside of Citadel, you find some crazy, Rust tools, you find, so many basing things and resin, and there's just a lot of cool tools. It's like, well, how do I use this in my army? And you don't have to do everyone in everything, but it does. And like something simple right here you've used is that's cotton wool, right? Cotton wool with the spider.
Just cotton wool. Yeah, just wrapped it round, stretched it, a little bit of super glue plast here and there, just to hold it in place and stuff. What I would say is, if you've got a strong stomach, look at abattoir imagery on on Google. I watched Event Horizon. Oh, what is this ship that gets attacked by a big tentacle monster? Deep Rising. There's a corridor just full of like half-eaten humans and just spat out. And they're like walking down this corridor. I had that on my computer for some nights as reference for like that pile of skulls and obviously the bloodbath that was there. So yeah, using reference is great, but one thing I found from doing a lot of like research is, and knowing from experience of cutting myself numerous times, is blood doesn't, after like an hour or two, isn't bright red when it's dry. It's brown because of the air having a chemical action with the blood. So having that on my my dice there, it's no longer bright blood. It's red or blood. It's getting a bit brown. It's starting to lose some of its color, and then just putting like brown tones in the deep parts of the stairs just looks like it's just crusted there for ages, and then dribbling brown into the middle where it started to look like it's clotted. It's like
I learned that with my daughters. I before I put on like blood for the blood god, I'll always like put little bits of brown, like Doombull brown or a couple of little things of brown, and then I'll put on the blood for the blood god, and it just makes a huge difference, because you're right, it's not that cartoony red, it is very much a brownie, especially when it starts to dry, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. It's horrid. But yeah, and on the skull pile, I just really like that thing. I just wanted to do like a big feasting like dais where this horrible, I think I called it the Pale Queen, this just giant albino spider. It was one random scenario for the live stream we did. I was like, I'm just going to paint up a big spider and just do like a big feasting pile where it just eats people. It's probably like numerous Daughters of Cain there and other, unfortunate adventurers, but some of them are a bit more redder than others, some are a bit more tarnished than others, some are a bit more lighter, depending on how long they've been there, how fresh the goop is on them. And that's, again, just looking at reference. I think there's one side that's a bit fresher than the other. So some are just like all brown, some of them are just like red bits and bobs, like red blooded skulls. But the treasure's worth it. I'm sure the treasure is worth it when you open that crate, whatever's in there.
But it's the simple detail, right? It's not the clean bone that we always see. It's this, blood soaked. Maybe it's not picked fresh. I think the other image as well, if you look at the on the right, something simple as the skeleton, as you put the Daughters of Cain witch elf crowns on their heads, and all of a sudden you've turned generic skeleton into something more fitting to the theme. And I think it's those little gems, it's those little things where, for example, in my skeleton Legions of Nagash army, I've painted the shields like the old Empire shields. So I've got a couple from Null, a couple from Empire, from Altdorf, because it turns from generic skeleton these were old Empire fighters, and it ties in my armies. You can look at different parts of different armies and try to find ways to tie in a theme. And it's these little things that sit there that are important to me, may get missed by the average Joe, but it does make a generic army something unique, special, brought to life.
Yeah, I mean, with this whole setup, I had this intention of doing a narrative campaign for not battle reports, for Twitch, but it was when we were in the office. But obviously COVID hit, so we had to do stuff from home. And I built up a handful of skeleton warriors, but I gave them Daughters of Cain blades and Daughters of Cain crowns. So it was like 10 skeletons, because when all the flesh is off them, we're all the same looking underneath. Maybe a femur bone slightly different shape or whatever, but who's going to know? But yeah, so I was just like, yeah, just a couple of little bits here. So because if it's in the catacombs of a Daughters of Cain temple, chances are that undead are going to be ancient Daughters of Cain. So it makes sense that any undead that rise are going to be Daughters of Cain themed. So yeah, and the top tip, guys, if you want to like really add a little bit more doll's housing to your temples or your bases, find rugs on the internet and then just print them out. That's just paper with a rug design on it. It's nothing more than that. Just cut into little strips and stuck on. Yeah, a man of many talents. Just photocopy stuff. That's how I do it.
That's brilliant. It goes back to the old days where we used to print off our banners just from the little books, and just they were paper, right? Couple of rapid fire questions to bring us home. Again, I'm conscious of time and I'm paranoid of the live stream. Although I could talk to you forever, Peachy.
Same.
I could talk to you
this is great.
Forever.
This should be a regular thing. We should do it as a regular thing.
Don't make that offer on the internet, because they're going to command this is the Peachy and Coach show. How do you break out a rut? Do you have any advice for breaking out of a rut, or maybe a creative rut where you've got this idea, but you're just like, I can't bring my vision to life, or I'm stuck, or it's all in my head, but I can't get it onto paper, onto models?
Yeah, I have a couple of strategies, as I like to call it. That if it's like a motivational rut, I have found tidying my desk and clearing the desk up makes your desk inviting. So if you've got like a unit, you still need to, I mean, I sometimes don't practice what I preach because I've still got like some venturing nobles I need to finish, but I'll come to my other solution, which is where I'm at now. So one of the big things I always do is I tidy my desk up, move some things out of the way. It looks inviting. You want to sit down and you want to do some hobby, because it's almost like gone, it looks nice. I want to sit there and do some painting. So that's the first thing I always do. The second thing is a palette refresher, and it could be a random character. It could be a different game system. Warcry is great for that. And we talked about, like, I've done armies many times and I keep adding to certain armies, but Warcry is really good for like ticking a little box. Like, you know what? I'm going to do some witch hunters. I've got 5 witch hunters from that new set, or 4 witch hunters and some dogs. I'm just going to sit and paint them, and then I'm going to crack back on with my whatever I'm working on. Currently, at the moment, I've got some Venturine Nobles. I'm in what we call the November period, because it's November. And someone tasked me to paint up one of every empire, city, state, and state in the colours. Use the colours, but put them on the Venturine Nobles. So it's Cadians with Outrider heads. And I've been finding that really enjoyable. And it's pushed me to come up with, like, the one I didn't think I'd enjoy the most was Ostland. I thought black, white, bit of red. That's the one I like the most. And I think when the new Cadians come out, I'm going to do that colour scheme on the Cadians, because I really, really like it. But what it's done is it's inspired me. I want to get these finished so I can finish off my platoon of grey coated Venturines on my desk. So just little palette refreshers like that sometimes can just like get your motivation back. And the big one is do something that's not that game system. I know I kind of roughly touched on it a moment ago, but when I used to work at Workshop, we'd be doing like Warhammer or Age of Sigmar or 40k. I'd go home and do Lord of the Rings. Or if I was doing 40k, I'd go home and paint a little bit of Warhammer or some Napoleonics, something different. And that does help get you, if you've got one big project that's getting you down, just grab something that's from a different game system and sit and paint it. That really helps. And I found those strategies, either separately or all together sometimes, really do help get you back on the track, get you back on track, I guess. So yeah.
I've really enjoyed Dungeons and Doggos. So it was a Kickstarter. It was a Kickstarter I backed a few years ago, and it's actually gotten popular. Like they're just little dogs or cats. So there's a series of cats, and they're just modeled up like Dungeons and Dragons people. So there's like a paladin, there's a rogue, there's a cleric, and it's just dumb. It's fun. There's no stress. And I think that's part of like when I find myself in a creative rut, it's like just find something where I paint because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
There's no timeline. There's no expectation. I just put some music on and I'll just paint. And then you kind of get that refresh. I think clearing your desk is great, especially in between projects. I'll clear the desk, make sure that bits are away that I'm not going to be using, paints are put back. But I find a lot as well, it's the mental preparation. So when I sit down, I've got a plan, because the night before I talked earlier about, looking on Twitter and Pinterest, and I've done my research and I've watched videos like yours, and I understand the process. So when I get there, it's a productive 30 minutes, 1 hour, whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. I have another thing I do as well, and I think you add it as a question potentially. I'm just going to skip to a relevant page. So one of the things
by the way, I try to be professional, folks. I actually wrote a bunch of questions and I sent them to Peachy. We've been kind of like dancing in and out, but not really sticking to any script, or this has just been a free flowing conversation.
Well,
so I look professional.
Yeah, it was preparing me just in case it was like, hey, is this something that you don't want to talk about? I was like, yeah, I had a good read just to prepare myself. And, I don't want to be sitting there here going, let me think. But one of the things I use a lot, and I used to do all the way through my career at workshop when I was painting, is have a notebook with colours and stuff like that. So I have colour schemes here for like my celestial shield that I've called them, like my daughters of Cain. So I've got my daughters of Cain colour schemes there. So it tells me what colours I use for the magentas, what colours I use for the skin. But one of the things I like doing, and I don't know if other people do this, is there we go. I actually plan out the army. Wrong side, it's this side. Plan out the army like this. So I'm like, I've got this spearmen with so many. I've got this like unit of militia with so many. And then I kind of like, it's like the old sort of White Dwarf battle reports. I'm just showing you up there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if you dropped out or if you were just
no. I brought you onto the big screen, and I'm looking at the detail. I'm just like, this is incredible.
Yeah, and then I go even further afield, and then just start naming all the characters, giving them names like, what's my Fire Mage called? What's my Auric Rune Master called? So I just go right into a rabbit hole of like what the army looks like if it was a battle report for White Dwarf. So little blocks, naming all the characters. I don't sit there giving them like lots of lore and stuff, but then of course when I'm doing the colours, I write the colours down as I'm going on, and I've got it for everything I've worked on. And it's such a good book because look at that, it's Age of Sigmar.
That's really cool. I need to document mine better. It's something that I definitely know I need to do. I write it in like my phone notes. I'm a bit of a savage.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Savage.
but naming characters is so important. And this is a side conversation. Funnily enough, I recently just bought some nameplates for my Gargants, so they've all got names. I've got them. I'm getting them 3D printed from the UK as we speak. So then their name is going to live on the tabletop. And when I go to a tournament, I submit their army list in War Scroll Builder with their names. It annoys the TOs because it doubles the size, but I don't care.
I like those nameplates. I've been seeing them appearing a lot more, and I'm like, for things like Necromunda where it matters, and like my Age of Sigmar stuff, and even my Warcry, it just feels right just having because they become your own special character in your own story. They become like the Karl Franz or the Sigismund or the Volkmar the Grim, and if they die, then you feel a bit sad, and you fight all the harder to recover their body.
Well, it helps as well tell a story. Like a couple of years ago, I went to Australia's biggest event is called CanCon, and the TO, a wonderful TO, Clint, always has a bit of a narrative story. He tries to make it a tournament as much as, there's something for everybody. And the particular year we were fighting in the Jade Kingdom, a part of Gairan. And this is the first time I took my new Cities of Sigmar. The battle tome had just dropped, and I'd made the lore that my city was a combination, a little on the Opal Isle of Akshi. And it was like basically a brother city to Hallowheart and Tempest Eye.
Yeah.
And I challenged myself. I said, I want to know, why am I going to this tournament? Yes, obviously to win, but also I wanted to tell a story. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm gonna create a story that ties into the tournament, which was around Gairan and a specific part of the Jade Kingdom, I thought to myself, I want to be the research party.
Yeah.
So I am going to be basically going out to Gairan from Akshi to go find artifacts that we can study as a wizard firm. And anything we find, we might sell to Hello Heart, or we might do something with them to, like the old school of magic. And it made that tournament so much richer because I definitely wanted to win and I played to win. I think I went 4-1 with that, 4-1 or 4-2. I can't remember how it was. I did pretty well, but I still was able to tell a story and it was fun. It was a fun interaction. And that display board that you saw was actually my force going out to have that adventure.
Yeah, I did very early days of Twitch before. It was Rob Symes was like the presenter, I think, back in the day. And I played against Rob Crouchley and we did like this 5-week campaign. And I had my Hallow guild and he had something called the Red Tide, which was his undead. And he's very tournament based. He's never, we both talked. I was like, I'm not very tournamenty. I like narrative. And we kind of found a middle ground. But one of the things he got a lot of value out and I got a lot of value out was this is how I'd play a tournament. And this is why I really enjoyed it. Even though it was the same player, you can imagine it's different people, but every result of each game drove the narrative for the next one. So if certain things died or certain things happened, like my militia killed a dragon, they were called the Comic Chartists, then they became known as the Dragon Slayers. So I like changed the banner, I give like some extra iconography on them. I made one of my dogs got killed, he then made a ghost version of it, one of my Griffhounds. So it became this like kind of cool, it wasn't about the winning of the game anymore in those stories. Archibald was born. It became about what is the end result and how will that affect the next game. So I find that what you're just talking about there is really valuable because it's like you're playing to win, you're right, but you're finding out what artifact did you get, or why was that important? How is that going to help the war effort now for our force? So it ceases to become like about numbers and just faceless players. It's about, we've got an objective, boys. We've got to get over to that tower. We've got to get that scepter out of there, because if we don't, well, who knows what's going to get used? Chaos is going to take it and do weird things with it. So yeah, playing those kind of games, even though it's in a competitive setting, still has narrative elements to it. I'm big on, very much so.
Well, the tournament is 240 people, right? And only one person, only one person can win it. Yeah, there's a couple of extra prizes, but there's only one winner. So it's like, how do I get gratification from a tournament outside of just pure wins? And I think that's a fun element that you can play with yourself. And if your opponent wants to play along, and I've played plenty of games where I've given them my army list and it has the character names, they're like, what does that mean? Why is that character? And you play along. Matt Holt in the chat's a perfect example where he'll have a story, I'll have a story. We'll still play the game as is in a competitive sense, but we'll tell a story and we'll interact. And there's been times where, my opponents try to throw me off and said, is this what your character would really do? I'm like, shut up, I'm still want to
win. Nice. I like that. That gets me every time because I do it. I fall for that.
But then I just get spiteful and I just try to kill their heroes and just like, weird. Look, is there any final things? There's so much knowledge. And I think, again, painting phase, go check out the channel. It's not a new channel. The team was doing it for a while, about 6 odd months. And then you've recently joined the team. I saw your TikTok, with the motorbike. And I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah, felt like like Top Gear, the way Pat filmed it was like Top Gear. I was like, Jesus, mate. We've only got, it looks like high budget, but it's only his cameras. It's great.
So much fun. So no, I was just going to say, like, if you want to see some tutorials, you want to hear more about these stories, if you're interested in Games Workshop type stories, and you've been quite good and quite honest about how you saw things. So it's not both positive or negative. It's just how Peachy sees the world.
My opinion.
Is there any other final advice that you'd kind of share with us to make our army more attached to the mortal realms, more us, more unique, more interesting, break away from that box art, to tell that story, to whatever it is that is inspiring you to listen to this discussion? Any final thoughts?
I think one of the things I've discussed in the past on different platforms is it's easy to focus your efforts on the main storyline and the areas in those main storylines, and there's a chance you'll get disappointed if like certain story threads in the official Games Workshop books go on a change, because then it affects you directly as a hobbyist. So if you've got like Anvil Guard and you love Anvilgard, and then suddenly Marathi and the Dark Elves turn up and kick it over, that now affects your army. And you can still play historical Anvilgard if you want to, or like the remnants of Anvilgard, but it has actually now changed the way that you see that lore. It's like, but I was really attached to that. So what I do is I always pick things that are 40k Age of Sigmar that are on the outskirts of these places, and I still can go on campaigns and fight in these battles, but my city is never going to get kicked over. You know, certain things aren't going to happen that's going to radically change. Like, let's say in that top corner where you've got like, sorry, what are you going to say?
No. I was just going to rudely interrupt and actually show you how this has come about for me. So I mentioned earlier, this is the map of Shaun. This is the official map. You actually get a very detailed map. It's called the Great Parch. You can buy it digitally as well from the Soulbound people, which is awesome. So my city of Sigmar here is in the Opal Isle. So in between Hallowheart and Tempest Eye, not far from Hammerhall. So it gave me, and to be honest with you, rules wise, Hallowheart and Tempest Eye are the ones that I love the most. So it made sense to find a middle ground, but also it told a unique story, right? I'm protecting this ocean. I'm close to all these different things. What does it mean? How do I tell it on the tabletop? And to what you're saying, nobody can ruin it, right? Same time, my Daughters of Cain are based here. So I picked the Isle of Exiles. I read a lot of really cool narrative from the Soulbound RPG book. The Isle of Exiles really worked for me, and my splinter force of Daughters of Cain being the cult of Slaanesh. By the way, the inside joke here as well is that my Marathi is Britney Spears. So I've got the pop queen, and I've got Brit Rathy Hell Spears. It's a nod to Chuck Moore, who's got Tay Rathy, the Taylor Swift, and Jack from Rerolling Ones has jumped on with a Beyonce. So we're having a bit of a pop battle. But again, like my city is not any of the major ones. No one's coming in to steal the Isle of Exiles, or if they do, I've got a city and a splinter force that I can actually play out a little bit of a narrative. Sorry, please continue. I just thought I'd just share a visual example of what you said.
No, it's perfect. I mean, having the map there is a great example. So originally, I picked like way north of here that's so safe that if anything happens radically in any campaigns or big stories, I'm not going to get affected by it, but I can still affect, in my mind, the narrative of what's going off. So my army can make its way down to Steel Spike or Tempest Eye or whatever and still engage in those battles and the wars and the campaigns. But then I did some like Red Stormcast, which I called the Flame Lords of Iridia. And in that top right, you've got Iridian. So somewhere there is a city that might have a gate that links to Halaguild, and it's defended by the Flame Lords of Iridia. So I have elements that can be set into like the story as it is proper, but I'm also not going to have my beautiful city kicked over by Dark Elves because I put a lot of heart. And that's the other thing as well is with Cities of Sigmar, you've got a bunch of named cities as factions that you can build your army around. If you want to make your own, just pick one of those, change the color scheme, but use one of those cities that feels right. So mine, as much as I like Hallowheart because it sounds like Halaguild, Hammerhal is probably more fitting to my army. And so I use the Hammerhal rules, but I've called Halaguild. So yeah, always, find something that feels right for your story. Go on the peripherals a bit, so there's no chance of being massively upset if things are burnt or destroyed, but you can still engage and join in and batter some baddies.
Another example of what I did with my city, right? So the Opal Isle, it's not far from the Flamescar Peninsula. Something that I did was I wanted to get some chariots from the old, the Drakespawn chariots and the Scourge Runner chariots, but I didn't want that Serpentis kind of feel. I didn't think it felt right for my army. But you read the lore of the Flamescar, and there's a lot of lions. Indessa has a lion shield. So I actually went and found the old high elf white lion chariots, and I converted that to be my own Cities of Sigmar with Free Guild. But I was able to tap into that Flamescar to have the lions, but still tie into my lore. But again, that's why I think the maps and why I'm so a big advocate of the Soulbound RPG. In any way you can learn about the lore is it allows you to anchor yourself in the mortal realms and it gets you asking the questions. What does it mean? What does it look like? How do I tell the story? The Opal Isles is not far from the Titan Works. What is the Titan Works? How would that influence my army? Does the Kindling Forest there play a part? Like, what does this do? And that just creates so much inspiration, and I just run with it. That's for me the process.
And another thing, if you've got time and you've got the skill, print that out and then paint your own little shield in your own little city in a little place that you want. So, 4 miles above Atharti, you can paint your own little shield, your own little design, maybe use transfers, maybe like actually stick a physical shield on there. I do that.
This is just PowerPoint. I just grabbed a little image from PowerPoint. That's actually a shield from Total War Warhammer. And,
of course it is. Yeah.
And all I've done is I've used the city name from one of the old gods of the twin gods from the old world that was the 2 elven sisters. So some play on words there.
Yeah.
But like this is just PowerPoint. Like this doesn't take any skill. This is just like you got an image. And I would encourage anyone to play along. Like, cool, where's your army? Where's it based? And if we go to the local game store and we want to do a campaign about this, or just knowing where other people's armies are based, it's a lot of fun, and it brings that army to life.
No, agreed. You know what? It's flawless because I didn't realize that wasn't part of that. So well done. I was like, I like that. That's cool. You've based it around there. Oh no, you've actually put that on there. Mega. Perfect example of what I'm trying to say.
All I did was I stole this image here of the little castle. I scaled it down and then chucked it there. Grabbed that Google image with like a clear background, and it's not hard to do, but also now makes me feel like I'm a part of it, and nobody can ruin my lore. It can't be superseded by Games Workshop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, perfect. What a way to end.
Peachy, this has been awesome. Please give yourself a shout out. Please tell people where to find you, because we've had great crowd watching, even though it's Thanksgiving. Again, thank you for everyone who joined either late for the UK, whether you are watching this while you're celebrating, or maybe you've had too much turkey and you got the mobile phone out while you're trying not to sleep. But
shameless plug. Yeah, so I am Peachy. I'm with 2 guys, Pat and Jeff, and we're on the painting phase, which can be found on YouTube. We also have Instagram. They don't have Twitter because they're old and don't understand it, but I do have Twitter. So Peachy Tips on Twitter, Peachy Tips on Instagram as well. So if you can't find it, one of my many socials, I'm sure you can contact me. I can drop you the link. But yeah, we do a bit of everything. So at the moment it's just painting and chats, but there'll be more. There'll be battle reports, there'll be all sorts of things. Converting, we've done a bit of converting. Literally just want to do everything I want to do and teach and help and play campaigns. I mean, that's the thing as well. We've got this platform now where we can run campaigns, play campaigns, do Necromunda, Age of Sigma, Warcry, Mordheim. We could do what we want, whenever we want, however we want. But yeah, and also in the comments, guys, if you got like ideas and you watch the videos, you think that'd be really cool to see this, just chuck them in, because we're always looking at the comments, because we keep the comments on so you can comment. I know.
Yeah, it's so many times I want to go and comment on their video. I'm like, damn it, because there's been so many great discussions you had on like the Stormcast podcast, the community podcast. Like, turn the comment section on, and you do respond. I do comment often on videos, and I get a love heart or a comment. So the engagement helps.
Yeah. Sometimes it's Jeff responding and then doesn't think to check if I want to talk to you about it. I was like, I'll find him later and chat. But yeah, no, it's been fun. It's been a wild ride, and then we're going to enjoy doing more stuff. And yeah, hope you enjoy what you watch. And
2 final questions: Nagash or Felix? I don't know what the context is, but Nick's asking Nagash or Felix.
If it's to live, Felix, or to have Felix. If it's Felix Jaeger, it's Felix. It's going to be Felix. What about Nagash? Bring back the old clown version of Nagash? Yeah, let's do that.
Clown Nagash is so great. Gotrek or Thanquol?
Gotrek and Felix all the way. Sorry.
I don't know. I do like Thanquol and Bone Ripper, but at the moment, Thanquol's a bit a bit overpowered in the rules. So let's go. Oh, they're both jerks, actually.
Yeah, both jerks.
They're both jerks. Peachy, thank you for your time. I appreciate the flexibility with the crashing of the streams and joining me a little bit later. I really do appreciate it. Please go check out the Painting Phase, a great channel. I highly recommend it. I believe there's a Patreon as well, and yes. I believe Peachy might be doing some sneaky higher tier.
Yes, I could have mentioned that. Yeah, Patreon, I do one-to-ones if you want one-to-ones. It is costly, but it is 2 hours of my time where I sit down and talk about whatever you want and help you with whatever you want for 2 hours. Non-metallic metals, probably not, because I didn't do that, but anything else I can help you with. Literally anything else. Maybe not. Marriage.
I'm going to let you go to bed. I'm going to go to work. Thank you for everyone who joined the stream, either on replay or live. And thank you again, Peachy. This was awesome.
Thank you. Speak to you soon. Maybe see you again.
Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would love it if you press like on the video, as well as left me a comment to let me know what your thoughts are. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the video description. I want to give a massive shout out as well to the AOS Coast Patreons and YouTube members who are going in, and the funds are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you're all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a 1 on a redeploy.